The Mafia boss first noticed Gia Parker because she nearly destroyed his shoes with a cracked equipment case, 3 loose brass poles, and one very honest insult. Dante Moretti had been standing outside the private auction house on Madison Avenue at exactly 6:42 in the evening, looking like a funeral had learned how to wear cashmere, when Gia's black rolling case hit a broken patch of sidewalk, snapped open, and spilled half her work at his feet. Gold fabric clips bounced across the pavement. A steel frame rod struck the curb. One velvet-wrapped display riser rolled straight toward Dante's polished black shoe and stopped a breath before touching it, like even the riser had enough sense to fear him. The 2 men behind Dante reached inside their coats. The doorman froze, with one white-gloved hand still on the brass handle. A woman in diamonds gasped, as if Gia had dropped a body instead of event supplies. Gia, who had been running on 4 hours of sleep, cold coffee, and the last thin string of patience left in her body, looked up at the tall man blocking the sidewalk and snapped, "Are you planning to help, or are you just standing there being expensive?" No one moved. Even the taxis seemed to pass more quietly. Gia realized, one terrible second too late, that the man in the dark coat was not just another rich guest with sharp cheekbones and a coat that probably cost more than her van. She had seen his face once in a newspaper photo, though the article had not been brave enough to print half of what people whispered about him. Dante Moretti, the kind of man whose name made bankers answer private calls after midnight. The kind of man charity boards welcomed with smiles, and police captains avoided noticing too closely. The kind of man who did not get told to stop standing there being expensive by a fat woman in scuffed boots, black leggings, and a copper sweater with glue on the sleeve. One of his men took a slow step toward her. Gia lifted one finger without looking at him. "Do not touch my poles unless you understand the difference between brushed brass and cheap lacquer, because if you bend one, I will haunt your bloodline." The man stopped. Dante looked down at her. His face did not change, which was somehow worse than anger. He had dark hair combed back from a hard, beautiful face, eyes like cooled coffee, and a stillness that made the air around him feel arranged. Gia had installed hanging gardens over glass dance floors, built fake Roman ruins inside penthouses, and once suspended 300 paper cranes above a bridal table while the bride's mother screamed about ivory versus cream. She understood rich people panic. She understood important people pretending not to panic. But this man did not look panicked, annoyed, or even surprised. He looked interested, and Gia had been underestimated enough in her life to know that interest from powerful men was rarely safe. "You are bleeding," Dante said. Gia looked down. A thin red line crossed the side of her left thumb where the broken latch had cut her. She wiped it on her sweater before thinking, then regretted it, because the sweater was new enough to still have hope. "It's fine." "It is not fine." "Are you a doctor?" "No." "Then you are guessing." His mouth moved by the smallest amount, not quite a smile. More like his face had considered the idea and decided it was dangerous. "I know blood when I see it." "I bet you do." The doorman made a strangled sound. One of Dante's men stared at her as if she had just stepped calmly into traffic. Gia bent down to gather the clips, because someone had to keep the evening from turning into a disaster, and based on everyone else's expression, that person was still her. Her knees cracked when she crouched, because her knees liked to remind her that she was 38 and had spent most of her adult life carrying things men pretended were light. Dante watched her for 1 second, then did the strangest thing. He crouched too. Not all the way, not clumsily, not like a man used to floors. But he bent one knee, picked up the velvet riser, and held it out to her. Gia stared at it. "You know that's not a bomb, right?" "I assumed." "Then why are your friends about to tackle my fabric samples?" "My friends are dramatic. They look armed. They are also armed. That explains the drama." This time he did smile, very slightly, and the whole sidewalk seemed to notice. Gia took the riser from him. His hand was steady. Mine was not, and that annoyed her. Men like him did not deserve to make women's hands unsteady simply by existing in good tailoring. She tucked the riser back into the case and tried to force the broken latch closed. It popped open again. A roll of ivory gauze slid out like it had chosen betrayal. Dante reached for it. Gia caught his wrist without thinking. Everything stopped again. His men moved faster this time. Dante lifted his free hand, and both of them froze. Gia looked down at her own fingers wrapped around the cuff of his coat. The fabric was soft enough to make her angry. She released him immediately. "Sorry," she said, because apparently she was capable of self-preservation after all. "The gauze is clean. Your hands are not." His eyes lowered to her face. "You think my hands are dirty? I think you are Dante Moretti." The silence shifted. There it was, the name between them, heavy, polished, dangerous. Dante's gaze sharpened, but not with threat, with amusement. "And you still grabbed my wrist. You were reaching for imported fire-treated ivory silk gauze with city sidewalk hands. That would have been unforgivable. Finally, you understand." His smile came again, quicker this time, and it did something unfair to his face. It made him look younger for half a second. Human, almost. Gia disliked that even more than the coat. Behind him, the auction house doors opened, releasing warm light, soft piano music, and the low murmur of wealthy people pretending not to look. Inside, Gia could see the edge of the entry hall, where her team had already installed the first arch of copper branches and hidden lights. Tonight's private auction was supposed to look like an enchanted winter greenhouse, if an enchanted winter greenhouse also had armed security, billionaire collectors, and rare objects sold quietly to people who did not like questions. Gia had designed the installation in 6 days because the original designer quit after the host called Moss "poor people carpet." Gia had not slept properly since Tuesday. She still had to check the chandelier rig, re-steam the back curtain, hide the ugly emergency exit sign behind a silk panel without violating fire code, and keep her assistant Tyler from crying in the freight elevator again. So Dante Moretti, with his lethal calm and nearly ruined shoes, was not the problem tonight. He was just a strange, handsome, expensive obstacle. Gia reached for the broken latch again. Dante took a handkerchief from his coat pocket. Actual handkerchief. White, folded, ridiculous. He held it out. Gia glanced at it. "No. You are bleeding on your sleeve. My sleeve and I have an understanding. Take it. I don't take gifts from men who bring bodyguards to art auctions." "It is not a gift. It is fabric. It is monogrammed. You object to letters? I object to owing favors." Something changed in his eyes then. Something cool moved behind the humor, as if she had said a word he recognized from older rooms. He did not step closer. That mattered, though Gia did not know why she noticed it. Most men who wanted to prove a point leaned in. Dante stayed exactly where he was and lowered the handkerchief slightly, making it an offer again instead of an order. "You do not owe me," he said. "You are bleeding. This solves a small problem." Gia looked at him for one more second. Then she took it, wrapped it around her thumb, and tied it with her teeth, because both hands were occupied, and she refused to ask Dante Moretti for help, tying anything near her skin. He watched the knot. "You have done that before. I work events. There's always blood, usually from florists." "Florists? Never stand between a florist and a late hydrangea order. I will remember that." "You probably won't. I remember warnings from dangerous women." Gia snorted before she could stop herself. "I am carrying curtain rods in a broken case and sweating through my bra outside a building where one bottle of champagne costs more than my electric bill. I am not dangerous." Dante's eyes moved over her, not the way most men looked at her when they were deciding whether her body gave them permission to be cruel. His gaze was not soft, exactly, but it was direct. He seemed to see the width of her hips, the roundness of her stomach beneath the sweater, the strong arms, the tired eyes, the stubborn mouth, and somehow none of it became a joke in his face. That was rare enough to feel suspicious. "You are the only person on this sidewalk who is not afraid of me," he said. "That is either courage or poor judgment. Mostly deadlines." His laugh was quiet, not warm, not yet, but real. The sound irritated one of his men, or maybe scared him. Gia could not tell. Men who worked for dangerous men always looked as if happiness might be a security issue. The doorman finally remembered how to breathe. "Mr. Moretti, they are expecting you inside." "I know." Gia zipped the case as much as the broken latch allowed and stood. Her back protested. She ignored it. Dante stood too, smooth and easy, because of course his back did not sound like an old staircase. He glanced toward the case. "That will open again. I'm aware. I can have someone carry it. I can have someone mind their business." Another pause, another almost smile. "You have a name?" he asked. "Yes." He waited. Gia lifted the handle of the case. That was the full answer. Something like pleasure moved across his face, slow and dark. "Then I will ask someone else." "You do that." "I will." "Great." He looked down at the handkerchief around her thumb. "Keep pressure on that." "Yes, Dr. No." He stepped aside at last. Gia rolled the wounded case past him, shoulders squared, chin up, the way she always walked when people were watching, and she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing how tired she was. She made it 3 steps before the case popped open again, and 3 brass poles slid out behind her. Dante picked up all 3 without saying a word. Gia closed her eyes. "I hate tonight already." "Then it can only improve," he said. "That is not true. I work in events." This time his laugh followed her through the open doors. Gia told herself not to look back. She looked back anyway. Dante Moretti stood in the auction house doorway, holding her brass poles like a man deciding whether fate had made a clerical error. The warm light caught the silver at his temple, the clean line of his jaw, the darkness of his eyes. He should have looked ridiculous with event hardware in his hands. He did not. He looked like he had been handed a weapon from a more theatrical century. Gia took the poles from him. Their fingers brushed once. A small thing. Nothing. Less than nothing. But the contact moved through her in a way she did not welcome. "Thank you," she said, because she had manners when they survived stress. "You are welcome. Do not make this weird." It was not weird until you gave instructions. It becomes weird fast with men like you. Men like me. Men who smile like they know where the exits are and who owns the building. Dante's eyes warmed by one quiet degree. "I do know both of those things." "Of course you do. And you? What about me? Do you know where the exits are?" Gia looked toward the side hallway, then the service door half hidden behind a velvet rope, then the stairwell sign reflected in the marble wall. 3 public, 2 staff, 1 freight, 1 roof if someone forgot to lock it, which based on this venue's general attitude toward labor safety, they probably did. Dante studied her for a moment too long. "What?" she asked. "You notice things." "I get paid to make rich people believe rooms transformed by magic instead of union labor and panic. Noticing things is most of the job. And the rest? Fixing what arrogant people break." He tilted his head. "I look forward to watching you work." Gia did not know why that sounded less like polite interest and more like a promise. She should have walked away. She did walk away, but she felt him watching her all the way down the hall. By 7:18, Gia had forgotten him on purpose. Not fully. because forgetting Dante Moretti was probably not a thing a person did. More accurately, she shoved him into the part of her brain where she kept unpaid invoices, back pain, family insults, and all other things that could not be handled until the job was done. She crossed the entry hall with her broken case dragging behind her like a dying animal, and found Tyler standing on a ladder beneath the copper arch, looking pale. "The left branch is sagging," he whispered. Gia looked up. It was not sagging. It was thinking about sagging, which was worse, because rich people never noticed a problem when it was easy to fix. They noticed when gravity got dramatic. "Zip ties," Gia said. "I used the black ones. Use the clear ones. We're out." Gia looked at him. Tyler swallowed. "I know." Gia took a long breath through her nose. "Okay, that's not a crisis. It feels like a crisis. Everything feels like a crisis when you haven't eaten. I had almonds." "Almonds are not food. Almonds are a rumor." He made a sound that might have been a laugh if panic had not sat on it. Gia handed him her case handle. "Hold this closed. Do not let it humiliate me again." "What happened?" "Sidewalk betrayal. Also possibly Mafia." Tyler blinked. "What?" "Later." Gia climbed the ladder herself, knees complaining, hips pressing against the sides, because all event ladders seemed designed by men who thought every worker was shaped like a broomstick. She reached above her head, grabbed the copper branch, and tested the weight. Too much tension on the left wire. She knew it before she saw it. The branch was beautiful, but beauty had a talent for becoming dangerous when nobody respected weight. She loosened the wrong tie, shifted the frame a quarter inch, and felt the whole arch breathe into balance. "There," she said. Tyler looked up with worshipful exhaustion. "How do you always know?" "Because I have been wrong in every possible way already." She stepped down carefully and heard a voice behind her. That may be the most honest professional statement spoken in this building. Gia did not turn right away, mostly because she knew the voice, partly because she did not want Tyler to see her face do anything stupid. Dante stood near the wall with a glass of water in his hand. Not champagne, water. Somehow that felt more dangerous. His men lingered far enough away to pretend he was alone, and close enough to prove he never really was. Gia brushed dust from her sweater. "Are you lost, Mr. Moretti? So you found my name. You're famous in a terrible way. Fame is rarely useful when it is pleasant. That sounds like something printed on black stationery. Would you like some?" "No." Tyler looked between them, with the expression of a man watching a lion politely ask a house cat for directions. Dante's gaze moved to the arch. "You made this?" Gia glanced at it despite herself. The copper branches rose in a curve over the marble hall, threaded with tiny amber lights and paper-thin leaves brushed in old gold. At night, when the overhead chandeliers dimmed, the whole thing would glow as if autumn had stepped indoors and decided to stay rich. It was good work. Gia knew it was good. That did not stop her mother's voice from sliding in, as it always did when someone asked about her job. "Decorations, Gia. You make decorations. Claire works with law partners. Claire meets judges. Claire has clients. You have centerpieces." Gia folded her arms. "My team made it." "That was not what I asked. My company designed it. That was also not what I asked." Gia looked at him. "Yes, I made it." Dante's eyes moved over the arch again, slower now. "It changes the room. That's the idea." "No, many people fill rooms. This changes it." The compliment landed in an unguarded place. Gia hated when that happened. She had armor for insults. She could hear an insult from 3 rooms away and have a response loaded before the person finished breathing. Compliments were more inconvenient. They got behind things. "It's a private auction," she said. "The room needs drama but not personality. Rich collectors like atmosphere that suggests depth without forcing them to have any. Dante looked at her. You dislike these people. I like their checks. Honest again. I'm too tired to perform mystery. His mouth curved. A shame. You seem good at it. Gia opened her mouth to answer, but her phone buzzed in the deep pocket of her sweater. She looked down and saw her mother's name. Mom. Of course. Because nothing summoned Linda Parker faster than a moment in which Gia almost felt seen. Gia rejected the call. The phone buzzed again. She rejected it again. Dante noticed. Of course he noticed. Men like him probably noticed when birds changed direction. Problem? He asked. No. The phone buzzed a third time. Gia stared at it. The screen lit with Linda's name, bright and demanding. Her thumb hovered. She should answer, because if she did not, Linda would keep calling until Gia either responded or died, and even death would probably only buy her 15 minutes. Gia stepped behind the copper arch and took the call. What? Gia whispered. Do not speak to me like that, Linda said immediately. Gia closed her eyes. Her mother's voice was crisp, polished, and offended by every feeling it created. Linda Parker had the kind of tone that made apology sound like a housekeeping request. I'm working, Gia said. You are always working when I call. Yes, that's how jobs happen. A pause. Claire answered me from court last week. Gia looked toward the ceiling. Then call Claire. I would, but your sister is very busy with serious responsibilities. Something in Gia's stomach tightened. Not because the sentence was new, because it was old. So old it had become part of the furniture inside her. Claire was serious. Gia was dramatic. Claire was successful. Gia was creative, which Linda always said the way other people said, contagious. Claire had a career. Gia had projects. Claire had earned respect. Gia had apparently been born owing everyone proof. I have serious responsibilities, Gia said, though she hated herself for defending it. Gia, darling, you arrange parties. Gia looked at the arch she had built with 3 vendors, 4 installation permits, fire-safe fabric treatments, structural calculations, insurance riders, and a budget large enough to buy Linda's house twice. I design large-scale event environments. Yes, well, I need to know what you are wearing Thursday. Gia blinked. That's why you called me 3 times. Thanksgiving charity dinner is not casual this year. The Thornbridge Foundation board will be there, and Rebecca Cole is bringing people from the museum trustees. I do not want surprises. Gia looked down at her glue-stained sleeve. I was planning to wear a live raccoon. Do not be vulgar. It would have a bow. Gia, she pinched the bridge of her nose. I have a black dress. Which black dress? The one that fits. Another pause. Gia knew that pause. It was the moment Linda decided whether to say the cruel thing plainly or wrap it in concern. I only ask because photographs will be taken, Linda said. You know how certain fabrics cling. There it was. Soft, polite, poison in a teacup. Gia opened her eyes. Across the hall, Dante was still near the wall, speaking quietly with a man in a grey suit. He was not looking at her now, but Gia had the strange feeling he knew something had shifted anyway. My body will be attending the dinner, Gia said, so the fabric will have to cope. Must you make everything combative? Must you make fabric sound like a hostage crisis? I am trying to help you avoid embarrassment. Gia laughed once, but there was no humor in it. No, Mom, you're trying to avoid being embarrassed by me. Linda went silent. Gia almost wished she had yelled. Silence from Linda always felt like a door closing. I do not have time for your mood, Linda said. Claire will be there, and I would like one evening where this family looks united. Claire's coming? Of course Claire is coming. A tiny old ache opened beneath Gia's ribs. It was stupid. She loved her sister, Even when loving Claire felt like standing beside a spotlight pointed away from her. Claire had always been beautiful in the way Linda understood. Slim, composed, blonde hair smooth as a campaign ad, pearl earrings, law degree, correct husband once, correct divorce later, correct sadness after. Even Claire's mistakes seemed expensive enough to be respectable. Gia's mistakes had volume. "I haven't heard from Claire in weeks," Gia said. "She is overwhelmed. Some of us have demanding careers." Gia's hand tightened around the phone. The handkerchief around her thumb was already spotted red. Dante's handkerchief. She had forgotten she was still wearing it. "My job is demanding," Gia said quietly. Linda sighed. "Then why are you always struggling?" The sentence should not have hurt. It had cousins. It had ancestors. It had been said in different clothes for years. But tonight, standing inside a room she had transformed, wearing somebody else's white handkerchief over a bleeding thumb, listening to her mother praise a sister who no longer returned calls, it found a soft place. Gia looked at the glowing arch, the impossible branch she had fixed, the room that needed her to make it beautiful before rich people stepped inside and believed beauty simply appeared for them. "I have to go," she said. "Do not hang up on me." "Then say goodbye fast." "Gia." "Goodbye, Mom." She ended the call and stood still for a moment, phone in hand. The auction house sounds moved around her. Glasses clinked. Guests murmured. Someone laughed near the registration table. Tyler whispered fiercely at a vendor about candle placement. The evening continued because evenings did not care what mothers said. Gia shoved the phone back into her pocket and turned. Dante was watching her now. Not obviously, not rudely, but fully. She lifted her chin. "What? I did not ask. You looked like you did. I looked because you went still." Gia hated that. Not him noticing that he was right. "I'm fine." No one says that because they are fine. No one with manners argues with a woman who says she's fine. I have very few manners. I noticed. He came closer, but not too close. Always that careful distance. Strange, from a man rumored to take whole restaurants private if he disliked the table spacing. "Your thumb," he said. Gia looked down. Blood had soaked through part of the handkerchief. "It's dramatic. It needs cleaning. It needs to survive until 11. "Your work ends at 11. My paid work ends at 11. My worrying will run long." A small look crossed his face. "About your mother?" Gia's eyes narrowed. "Do you always collect information from people's faces?" "Yes." Creepy. Useful. Still creepy. He accepted that with a slight nod. "She upset you. She gave birth to me. It's her hobby." That earned the smallest smile, but it disappeared quickly. "Does she often speak to you like that?" Gia looked at him for a long second. The question was simple, too simple, and underneath it was something that made her uncomfortable because it did not sound like curiosity. It sounded like he was already angry on her behalf, and Gia did not trust borrowed anger. People liked getting angry for you until the anger required inconvenience. Then suddenly, they wanted you to be reasonable. "She speaks to everyone like that," Gia said. "That was not the question. It's the answer I'm giving." Dante nodded once, as if respecting the border. "Fair." Gia did not expect that. "That's it?" "For now." She studied him. "You don't seem like a for now man." "I am, when someone tells me not to touch the gauze." Gia almost smiled. Almost. Before she could respond, Rebecca Cole appeared beside them in a midnight blue dress and museum pearls, carrying a tablet and the cold confidence of a woman who had survived boards, donors, and men who confused wealth with intelligence. Rebecca was the auction consultant tonight, hired to make sure the rare pieces were described in a tone that sounded legal but still exciting. "Gia," Rebecca said, relieved. There you are. The East display is perfect, but the Sloane piece has been moved again. Gia's tiredness sharpened into attention. Moved where? Main glass case. Gia frowned. That ruins the sightline. Who approved it? Rebecca's mouth tightened. Victor Sloane. Dante went very still. Gia noticed, because the air noticed. Rebecca noticed too, and her eyes flicked toward Dante before returning to Gia. The name sat between them differently than Linda's had. Linda's name carried history. Victor Sloane's carried risk. Gia had heard of him in the same vague way she had heard of Dante, a businessman. A donor, a man who smiled in photographs with mayors and had enough rumors attached to him to need good lighting. He funded art restorations, hospital wings, literacy grants, and anything else that placed his name on a wall. He also had a reputation for making people sign things they later regretted. Gia looked toward the main hall. Where is he? Near the case, Rebecca said, looking pleased with himself. Of course he is. Dante's voice was quiet. Which piece? Rebecca hesitated. The Eleanor strand. Gia turned so fast her case bumped her ankle. What? Rebecca looked almost apologetic. The Parker pearls. They came in under the estate loan. I thought Linda told you. The room tilted, just slightly. Gia stared at her. My grandmother's pearls are here? Rebecca's face changed. You didn't know. Gia felt heat move up her neck. Not embarrassment, something worse. Eleanor Parker's pearls had belonged to her grandmother, the only person in Gia's family who had ever looked at her and seen more than a problem to correct. Eleanor had worn those pearls to church, to weddings, to grocery stores when she felt like being dramatic. After she died, Linda had said the pearls were being kept safe. Gia had asked once if she could wear them to her first big event opening. Linda had said no, they were too delicate, and besides, Claire might need them for professional portraits someday. Now they were in an auction house, moved by Victor Sloane, displayed without anyone telling Gia. Are they being sold? Gia asked. Rebecca's pause was answer enough. Gia's throat tightened. By who? Linda signed the consignment paperwork, Rebecca said softly. Claire is listed as family counsel. The words did not make sense at first. They floated toward her and refused to land. Claire, family counsel, the pearls, Linda, an auction, no warning, no call, no shame. Dante looked at Gia then, and the amusement that had lived around his mouth all evening vanished completely. Gia, he said, softer than before. She did not like how her name sounded in his voice, not because it was ugly, because it made her feel as if she might fall apart if she listened too closely. I need to see them, she said. Rebecca touched her arm. Maybe wait until after the guests settle. No, I need to see them now. Dante stepped aside, letting her pass. Gia walked into the main auction hall with her broken case abandoned behind her, thumb wrapped in a blood-marked handkerchief, heart beating with a strange hollow force. The room she had designed glowed around her. Copper branches curved over dark velvet walls. Hidden lights shimmered behind antique glass. White flowers floated in tall cylinders like moonlit ghosts. It was beautiful, painfully beautiful. Gia had made the room feel like memory, and now memory had turned against her. The main glass case stood beneath the largest arch, exactly where the sightline should have stayed open. Inside, on a dark blue velvet stand, rested her grandmother's pearls. Eleanor's pearls were not grand by auction standards. They were not enormous, not royal, not rare enough to make collectors whisper. But Gia knew every soft imperfection in them. She remembered the tiny uneven pearl near the clasp, the faint warmth of the strand after Eleanor took them off and let Gia hold them in both hands as a child. The way her grandmother used to say, "Pretty things do not have to apologize for taking up space, baby." Then she would look at Gia with a meaning Gia understood, before she had words for it. Pretty things do not have to apologize for taking up space. Gia stood in front of the case and forgot to breathe. A man beside it turned with a pleased smile. Victor Sloan was handsome in the polished way of men who practiced sympathy in mirrors. Silver blonde hair, clear blue eyes, soft voice, black tuxedo, charity pin on his lapel. He looked like every board photo in every expensive lobby. He looked harmless if you believed teeth only mattered when shown. "Gia Parker," he said warmly. "I wondered when you would notice." Dante stopped a few steps behind her. Victor's eyes moved past Gia and found him. The warmth stayed on Victor's face, but it thinned at the edges. "Moretti. I did not realize you were interested in family heirlooms." "I am interested in many things," Dante said. "So I hear." Gia barely listened. She looked at the pearls. "Why are they here?" Victor gave her a wounded smile. "I believe your mother chose to support the foundation auction. Very generous. My mother doesn't give away things unless she gets something back." Victor's smile held. "Families are complicated." Gia turned to him. "Who moved the case?" "I suggested a better placement. You ruined the installation." "Did I?" "Yes." He looked around, still smiling. "I think the room can survive one adjustment." Gia hated him immediately, not with loud anger. With the clean certainty of recognizing a type. Victor Sloan was one of those men who broke a chair and then praised the floor for catching it. "The case goes back to the East display," Gia said. "I'm afraid it stays here. This is my design. And this is my donated feature piece." Dante's voice came from behind her. "It is not donated if it is being sold." Victor's smile shifted. Precise, as always. Gia looked between them. There was history there. Not casual dislike, something darker, old enough to have rules. Dante and Victor stood several feet apart, both calm, both dressed for charity, both carrying a kind of violence the other guests pretended not to sense. Victor turned back to Gia. "I hope you do not take this personally. Your grandmother's pearls will bring attention. Attention brings bids. Bids bring money to good causes. They were not yours to use as decoration. Nor yours, from what I understand." The sentence struck too close. Gia's face heated. Dante took one step forward. Gia lifted her hand without looking back. "No." Dante stopped. Victor noticed. His eyes brightened with interest, and Gia wished she had bitten her tongue in half before giving him that information. Men like Victor collected weaknesses. She had just shown him Dante could be stopped by her voice. That was not safe. Not for her. Maybe not for Dante either. Victor looked amused. How charming. Gia met his eyes. "You moved the case because you wanted people to ask about the pearls." "I moved it because the lighting is better." "You moved it because my mother and sister are connected to the paperwork, and you wanted somebody in this room to notice." "I noticed. Congratulations." Victor's smile did not change, but his eyes cooled. "Careful, Miss Parker. People often mistake instinct for intelligence when they are emotional." Gia felt Dante change behind her. Not move. Change. The room seemed to tighten around his stillness, but Gia did not step back. She had spent her life being called emotional by people who created the injury and judged the bleeding. Too loud, too sensitive, too much, too sharp, too dramatic, too big in every possible meaning of the word. It used to make her defend herself. Now it made her tired. "I am emotional," Gia said. "I'm also right." Victor gave a small laugh. A dangerous combination. No, a useful one. For 1 second, something honest crossed his face. Annoyance. Not at the insult, at her refusal to become embarrassed by herself. Then Rebecca arrived, tablet clutched tight. "Gia, I need your approval for the west curtain before doors close." It was an excuse, a good one. Gia took it. She looked once more at the pearls, then turned away before the ache in her chest could become visible. Dante fell into step beside her, not touching, not crowding. Behind them, Victor Sloane's gaze followed like a hand placed between her shoulder blades. They reached the shadowed corridor near the staff entrance before Gia stopped. "I said no back there," she said. "You did. And you listened." "I did." "Why?" Dante looked at her, and for once his dry humor was gone. "Because you said it." That answer was too simple again, too clean. Gia did not trust clean answers. Life had taught her that clean usually meant scrubbed. "You don't know me," she said. "No. Then don't act like you do." "I know enough." She laughed, but it came out sharp. "You know I yell about fabric and insult strangers. That's not enough. I know you were hurt by the pearls." Her throat tightened. "People get hurt by stupid things." "That was not stupid. It's jewelry." "It is not jewelry to you." Gia looked away first. She hated that he was right. She hated that a man with rumored blood on his hands could see something her own mother had spent years stepping over. "They were my grandmothers," Gia said finally. "She was the only person in my family who never made me feel like I had to earn the right to be in a room." Dante said nothing. Gia rubbed the edge of the handkerchief around her thumb. She wore those pearls everywhere. Grocery store, church, funerals, my high school art show. My mother hated that. She said pearls should be saved for important occasions. My grandmother said waking up alive was an important occasion if you knew how to dress for it. Dante's face softened by a degree so small most people would have missed it. Gia did not. "She sounds wise," he said. "She was impossible. That may be better." Gia looked back toward the auction hall. "My mother told me they were in a safe. They are in a case." "Yes, I noticed." "You did not know they were being sold?" "No. And your sister signed the paperwork." Gia's mouth tightened. "Apparently." "Why?" Gia almost gave the easy answer. "Because Claire does whatever Linda wants. Because Claire has always been the good daughter. Because the world bends around women who look like Claire and hardens around women like Gia. But even inside the anger, something felt wrong. Claire loved Eleanor too. Not the same way Gia did, maybe, but enough. Claire had been distant lately. Yes, hard to reach. Too busy, according to Linda. But Claire did not usually ignore family things that mattered unless something else was happening. "I don't know," Gia said. Dante heard the uncertainty. "But you are thinking." "I am always thinking. It's why I look tired." "What are you thinking?" "That my mother is cruel, but she's not careless with status. If she sold those pearls, she needed money, or leverage, or both. And Claire signing as counsel is strange because Claire hates messy family paperwork. She would have made Linda use an estate attorney." Dante's eyes sharpened again. "You said your sister is a lawyer." "She is." "Where?" "Benton, Clark and Wexler." Dante went very still. Gia noticed. "What? When did you last speak to her?" Gia frowned. "A few weeks, maybe more." "Directly?" "Yes. Not through your mother." Gia opened her mouth, then closed it. Dante's voice lowered. "When did you last speak to Claire directly?" Gia thought back. The last text from Claire had been short. "Sorry, buried at work. Call soon." Before that, a heart emoji after Gia sent a photo of a ridiculous floral installation. Before that, a voicemail Gia had not answered because she was working late. Maybe July. No, early August? Her stomach slowly tightened. "I don't know," she said. Dante looked toward the main hall, where Victor Sloane stood beneath Gia's glowing arch beside her grandmother's pearls. Benton, Clark and Wexler removed her from active case listings months ago. Gia stared at him. "What?" "I know the firm. Why do you know my sister's firm? Because Victor Sloan uses lawyers the way other men use locks. The corridor seemed to grow colder. Gia heard the party beyond the wall. Music, glass, soft laughter. The room she had built breathing gold light around people who believed danger always announced itself loudly. But danger did not. Sometimes danger wore a tuxedo and moved a glass case 6 feet to the left. Sometimes it called itself charity. Sometimes it sat in your mother's voice and asked what fabric you planned to wear. My sister still works there, Gia said, but even as she said it, doubt opened under the words. Dante did not correct her. That almost made it worse. Tyler appeared at the end of the hall with a roll of tape in one hand and terror in his eyes. Gia, sorry, I know, but the west curtain is doing a weird ripple thing, and the violinist just asked if the hanging lights are low enough to hit his bow, and I said no, but I didn't say it confidently. Gia closed her eyes. The world did not pause for family secrets. Curtains still rippled. Musicians still feared light fixtures. Auction guests still required atmosphere. Grandmothers still ended up in glass cases. Gia opened her eyes and looked at Dante. I have to work. I know. I am not done asking questions. I assumed. And you are not allowed to investigate my family behind my back. Dante's expression gave away nothing, which was answer enough. Gia pointed at him. I mean it. Then ask faster. That is not how boundaries work. No, he said, and the faint, dry note returned to his voice. But it is how enemies do. Gia held his gaze. She should have been afraid of him. A reasonable woman would have been afraid. Gia had many flaws, according to years of family review, and apparently one of them was that fear had to get in line behind irritation. Victor is your enemy, she said. Yes. And now he's standing next to my grandmother's pearls. Yes. That does not make us partners. No. It makes us two people standing near the same fire. Dante's eyes held hers. Then do not stand too close. Gia almost laughed, but the warning in his voice stopped it. He did not say it to scare her. He said it like a man who had seen many people underestimate heat. She picked up her broken case. Mr. Moretti. Gia. The sound of her name again. Low, careful, infuriating. Do not follow me into the West Hall, she said. Why? Because I need to fix a curtain, and if you stand there looking like bad news in Italian wool, Tyler will faint. Dante looked over her shoulder at Tyler, who immediately pretended to inspect the wall. Fair, Dante said. Gia walked away before he could see her smile. For the next 3 hours, she worked like the world could be repaired if the lighting was warm enough and the wires stayed hidden. She adjusted curtains, corrected table spacing, soothed the violinist, found emergency clear ties under a vendor's abandoned jacket, reattached a strand of lights, argued with the caterer about sightlines, and fixed the broken latch of her case, using florist wire and rage. Guests arrived in waves, wrapped in perfume and quiet money. They paused beneath her arch. They looked up. Their voices softened. Gia watched it happen from the side of the hall, and for one brief moment, despite her thumb, her mother, her sister, Victor, and the pearls, pride moved through her. She had made this, not as a hobby, not as a cute little talent, not as the thing she did because she was too loud, too big, too difficult, too strange for the paths Linda respected. She had built an entire mood from metal, silk, light, and nerve. She had made powerful people lower their voices because the room told them to. Then Linda Parker walked in wearing cream satin and the expression of a woman arriving to approve or condemn. Gia saw her before Linda saw Gia. Her mother looked beautiful, of course. Linda always did. Perfect silver blonde bob, pearls at her ears, slim body held like posture was a moral achievement. She wore kindness beautifully in public. That had fooled people for years. Men smiled at her. Women leaned close. Staff tried harder. Linda had the polished ease of a woman who believed taste and character were the same thing. Beside her was Claire. Gia's breath caught. Claire looked different. Not ruined. Not visibly. Linda would never allow visible ruin. But Gia knew her sister's face. She knew the tightness around Claire's mouth, the way her shoulders sat too high, the way her eyes moved too quickly over the room and then away from Victor Sloan. Claire wore a navy dress, simple and expensive, with her hair pulled back. She looked thinner than the last time Gia had seen her. Not elegantly thinner, despite what Linda might have called it, worried thinner, sleepless thinner. Gia stepped halfway out from behind a column. Claire saw her. For 1 second, something like relief flashed across her sister's face. Then Claire looked away. It hurt so fast, Gia almost missed the anger underneath. Linda noticed Gia next. Her eyes moved over the sweater, the black leggings, the boots, the wire still stuck to Gia's cuff, the handkerchief around her thumb. Her smile tightened in that tiny way only family could read. "Gia," Linda said, approaching with Claire behind her. "There you are." "Here I am," Gia said. Linda glanced around the hall. "This is dramatic. Thank you." "I did not say it as criticism. You rarely have to." Claire made a small sound. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a warning. Linda's eyes sharpened, then softened as 2 guests passed. "The room is lovely, darling. Truly. Everyone is saying so." The compliment arrived dressed for company. Gia let it stand because she was too tired to wrestle it. Her gaze moved to Claire. "Hi." Claire looked at her then. Her eyes were blue like Linda's, but tonight they looked cloudy. "Hi, G. G." Only Claire called her that. Gia's anger loosened for half a second. "You okay?" Claire's mouth opened. Linda answered for her. "She is exhausted. Important work takes a toll." Gia looked at her mother. "Does it?" Linda's smile warned her. Claire touched Linda's arm lightly. "Mum." "What?" "I am agreeing that Claire looks tired." "No, you're narrating her." Claire's fingers tightened around her small gold clutch. Linda laughed softly for nearby ears. Gia has always had a talent for making neutral observations sound like courtroom testimony. "I thought Claire was the lawyer." The sentence landed harder than Gia meant it to. Claire flinched. Linda went still. There it was again. Wrongness, a crack in the perfect glass. Gia looked at Claire more closely. "You still are the lawyer, right?" "Gia," Linda said. Gia ignored her. "Claire?" Before Claire could answer, Victor Sloan appeared beside them as smoothly as smoke. "Linda," he said warmly. "Claire. And Gia, of course. Your work tonight is memorable." Gia did not look away from her sister. Claire had gone pale. Linda smiled too brightly. "Victor, the placement of Eleanor's pearls is wonderful. Such a touching tribute." Gia's stomach turned. Claire whispered, "Mum, please." Victor's gaze moved over them, pleased by every fracture. Family treasures do have a way of bringing truths into the light. Gia looked at him then. "That depends who controls the lamp." His smile deepened. Still emotional. Still right. Linda's eyes flashed. "Gia, enough." Dante's voice came from behind Victor. "I disagree." No one had seen him approach. That seemed to be one of his talents. He stood just beyond Victor's shoulder, with a drink untouched in his hand, and danger quiet in every line of him. Linda's expression changed instantly. She recognized power, the way plants recognized sun. "Mr. Moretti." "Mrs. Parker." The fact that he knew her name landed in the group like a coin dropped in a silent room. Linda recovered fast. "I did not realize you knew my daughter." Dante looked at Gia, then back to Linda. I am learning. Gia wanted to tell him that sounded insane. She also wanted to ask why it made heat move up her neck. Victor smiled. Careful, Dante. The Parkers are an old family. Difficult women. Complicated loyalties. Dante did not look at him. The best families are difficult. Linda laughed politely, unsure whether she had been complimented. Claire looked at Dante with something sharper than surprise. Recognition? Fear? Gia could not tell. Then Claire's gaze dropped to the handkerchief on Gia's thumb. Dante's initials were stitched at the edge in dark thread. DM Claire's eyes lifted to Gia's face. Gia wished suddenly, absurdly, that she could explain. Nothing happened. I yelled at him. I bled on myself. He has weird manners. Also, maybe your life is falling apart, and our grandmother's pearls are in a glass case. Instead, she said nothing, because all the wrong people were listening. A bell chimed through the hall. The first auction viewing was about to begin. Rebecca appeared near the entrance and announced that guests could proceed toward the main displays. People started moving. The beautiful room shifted from party to performance. Linda touched Claire's back and guided her forward. Victor followed. Dante remained beside Gia. She watched her mother and sister walk toward the pearls. Something is wrong, Gia said quietly. Yes, you knew before tonight. I suspected before tonight. She turned to him. Why? Dante's eyes stayed on Victor. Because Victor Sloane does not display anything unless it can be used. Gia swallowed. And my family may already be used. The words were simple, natural, not harsh. That made them worse. Gia looked at Claire, standing beside Linda under gold light, smiling at a guest, while her hand trembled against her clutch. She looked at Victor, glowing with public kindness. She looked at Dante, feared by everyone except maybe her, which probably meant her instincts needed immediate medical attention. Then she looked at the pearls, her grandmother's pearls. Pretty things do not have to apologize for taking up space. Gia pressed her injured thumb against her palm until it hurt enough to steady her. I'm not letting him use them, she said. Dante glanced down at her. The pearls? Gia watched Victor lean close to Claire and murmur something that made her sister's face drain of color. No, Gia said. Any of us. For the first time all evening, Dante Moretti looked at Gia Parker with no amusement at all. Not because he was disappointed. Not because she had surprised him, because something in him had recognized something in her, and whatever it was had become serious. Then we should speak, he said. We are speaking. Privately. Gia gave him a tired look. That sentence usually means trouble. With me, yes. At least you're honest. Not always. She almost smiled. That was honest too. He offered his arm. Not like an order, not like ownership. Like an option placed carefully on a table. Gia looked at it, then at him. I can walk by myself, she said. I know. Good. She did not take his arm. He did not seem offended. They walked side by side along the edge of the room, past guests admiring art they wanted to own, past waiters carrying silver trays, past Linda's bright public smile and Claire's frightened silence, past Victor Sloane standing beneath Gia's copper branches as if he had planted himself there. Gia felt the evening opening around her, like one of her own installations, all hidden wire and controlled light. Only now she could see the structure underneath, her mother's lies, Claire's fear, Victor's fingerprints, Dante's interest. Her grandmother's pearls at the center of it all, glowing softly in a glass case like a warning from the dead. And for the first time in years, Gia understood with a strange, quiet fear that being underestimated had not made her invisible. It had made her useful. People had said things around her, hidden things near her, dismissed her work, her eyes, her memory, her anger. They had mistaken her size for clumsiness, her sarcasm for bitterness, her independence for loneliness, and her love for weakness. They had looked at Gia Parker and seen the daughter who made jokes too loudly, dressed too boldly, ate too much, wanted too much, and never became easy enough for her mother to display. They had not seen the woman who built worlds for a living. They had not seen the woman who knew exactly when a room had been altered. They had not seen the woman who had just noticed that the whole Parker family had been moved 6 feet to the left, placed under better lighting, and turned into part of someone else's design. Gia looked once more at Victor Sloan. Victor smiled at her from across the room. Dante's voice lowered beside her. "Do not let him know how much you see." Gia kept her face calm. "Too late," she said. "He already knows I noticed." Dante's gaze stayed on Victor. "Then he will test you." Gia thought of Linda's voice, Claire's pale face, the pearls, the handkerchief, the broken case, the way Dante had stopped when she said no. "Good," she said softly. Dante looked at her. Gia smiled without warmth. "I'm tired of being the only one tested." Dante did not answer right away. He looked at her as if the sentence had done something in the air between them, as if it had moved from irritation into truth, and truth was always more dangerous than anger. Around them, the auction hall kept glowing. Guests leaned over glass cases and praised old coins, rare books, silver boxes, and paintings they did not love, but wanted other people to know they could afford. Waiters moved through the room with trays of champagne. Someone laughed too loudly near the south arch. A violinist began playing something soft and expensive, the kind of music people chose when they wanted money to sound like grief. But Gia barely heard it. She was watching Victor Sloan across the hall, and Victor was watching her back, with the quiet pleasure of a man who had just found a locked drawer and heard something move inside it. Dante stepped beside her, close enough for his voice to reach her but not close enough to claim her. "Then do not react when he pulls the next string." Gia kept her eyes on Victor. "That sounds easy when you say it in a coat that costs 4 months of rent." "It is not easy. You sound experienced." "I am." "Do you always answer questions like a haunted elevator?" His mouth moved, but his eyes stayed cold. "Only when the questions are accurate." Gia hated that a part of her wanted to smile. She hated even more that standing beside him made the room feel slightly less tilted. She had been on her own for so long that any sudden steadiness felt suspicious. The last time a man had offered to help her move something heavy at an event, he had spent the next 4 hours calling her sweetheart and explaining basic electrical safety to her while standing in front of a plug she had already labeled. Help usually came with a hook. Praise usually had a receipt attached. But Dante Moretti did not ask for gratitude. He just watched the room like he knew every exit, every lie, and every person who had entered carrying a secret. Rebecca Cole appeared at Gia's side a minute later, tablet pressed to her chest, face composed in the careful way of women who had learned to look calm while the floor burned. "The west curtain is fixed," she said softly. "Tyler is guarding it like it's a royal infant." "Good," Gia said. He needed a purpose. Rebecca's gaze moved once to Dante, then back. "The pearls have already drawn 3 inquiries." Gia felt the words like a thumb pressed into a bruise. Of course they have. One bidder asked for the family history. Victor offered to tell it himself. Gia turned her head. He what? Quietly, with charm. Which is worse? Dante's voice stayed low. "What did he say?" Rebecca hesitated. That Eleanor Parker was a beloved old New York woman, that Linda was honoring her mother's legacy by putting something personal toward charity, and that Claire Parker had guided the legal side with her usual excellence. Gia laughed once. It sounded ugly even to her. Her usual excellence. Cute. Rebecca's expression softened. "Gia, I did not know you were unaware of the consignment. I swear to you, I thought this was family approved. It was. Just not by the family member with a memory. Who owns the pearls legally? The question was practical, and maybe that was why it hurt. Gia had spent years thinking of the pearls emotionally, as if love had ownership rights. But families were never that simple. Death turned things into paperwork. Paperwork turned memories into assets. Assets became weapons when the wrong hands picked them up. My grandmother left most of her jewelry to my mother, Gia said. Small things to Claire and me. Rings, pins. A brooch shaped like a bird nobody wanted because it looks angry. You wanted it, Rebecca said. Gia glanced at her. The bird understood me. Rebecca's mouth lifted faintly, then faded. So Linda can sell them. Legally, probably. Morally? Gia looked across the room at her mother, who was laughing with two trustees beneath an arch Gia had built. Linda looked proud, elegant, untouched by the fact that she had placed her own mother's pearls in a case without even calling her younger daughter. Morally, my mother has always treated that word like a decorative napkin. Dante looked at Rebecca. You said Claire signed as family counsel. Yes. Do you have the paperwork? Rebecca's eyes sharpened. Not on me. But you can get it. I can get a scanned copy from the auction office. Gia turned to Dante. You are doing it again. What? Sounding like you're in charge. I am asking for information. With the voice men use right before other men run. Dante looked at her. Would you prefer I ask badly? I would prefer you ask me before turning my family into one of your little shadow projects. They are already someone's shadow project. Gia opened her mouth, then closed it. That landed because it was true. Victor had moved the pearls for a reason. Claire looked frightened for a reason. Linda was hiding something for a reason. Gia hated that she did not know the reasons yet. She hated being behind in a room she had built. Rebecca studied both of them and made the wise choice to speak carefully. I can get the paperwork and send it to Gia. Dante's eyes flicked toward Rebecca. He did not like that. Gia knew he did not like it because his face did nothing. With Dante, stillness was often the nearest thing to a raised voice. Gia smiled. Excellent. To me. Rebecca nodded. To you. Dante looked at Gia for one long second. Fine. Painful word? Less painful than foolishness. Then you should say it more often, for practice. His gaze warmed by that quiet degree again. You are enjoying this. No, I'm stressed, bleeding, and emotionally cornered at an auction full of people who think chairs are an investment category. But irritating you has texture. Rebecca blinked, then coughed into her hand to hide a laugh. Dante looked almost pleased. Victor, across the hall, did not. His eyes had narrowed just slightly, as if he could not hear them, but understood the shape of alliance when he saw it forming. Gia noticed. He doesn't like that we're talking. No, Dante said. Good. Gia. What? Do not start enjoying his annoyance. Enjoyment makes people careless. I have been angry since 1997. I can multitask. Dante looked at her then, and something in his face changed so quickly she almost missed it. Not humor this time. Respect. Not the soft, flattering kind. The sharper kind. The kind that said he understood anger as fuel and knew the cost of carrying it too long. Before he could speak, Linda approached, her smile bright enough to warn every daughter in a 10-foot radius. Claire followed a step behind, holding her clutch with both hands. Victor trailed them, as if he had been invited by the family itself. Gia saw Dante's shoulders settle, not tense, ready. Gia, Linda said, voice light for nearby guests. There you are again. I feel as though I have to chase my own daughter through this lovely maze she created. You don't have to chase me, Mom. You could text like a normal person. Linda laughed, but her eyes sharpened. Always so funny. Not always. Sometimes I'm asleep. Victor smiled. A rare state, I imagine. Creative people must be restless. Gia looked at him. And corrupt people must be organized. We all have our gifts. Claire's breath caught. Linda's smile slipped. Dante's face stayed unreadable, but his eyes moved to Gia's for half a second, and she could almost hear him telling her not yet. Victor's smile remained gentle. I admire direct women. No, you don't. That landed. For 1 second, nobody saved him. The little group stood under the gold light with the auction moving around them, and Gia saw something flicker behind Victor's eyes. Not fear, not yet. A man like him did not fear a woman like Gia until she had proof. But irritation, yes. Interest, definitely. She had scratched the shine, and beneath it, something colder was awake now. Linda touched Gia's arm, fingers pinching just enough to look affectionate from a distance. Darling, may I speak with you? Gia looked down at her mother's hand. Linda released her. Sure, Gia said. Here? In private. Oh, now privacy matters, Claire whispered. Gia, please. Gia looked at her sister. That small plea did what Linda's grip could not. It pulled Gia back from the edge. Claire's face was pale, her eyes too bright. This was not the sister who had once argued down a landlord for charging Gia an illegal fee. This was not the sister who sent color-coded calendars before family trips and always knew the fastest subway transfer. This Claire looked like a woman standing in the wrong room, with no door she trusted. Gia softened just enough to hate herself for it. Fine. Dante's voice came quietly. I will be near. Linda turned her polished smile toward him. That is thoughtful, Mr. Moretti, but this is a family matter. It appears to be many things. Linda stared at him, unsure whether he had insulted her. Dante gave her nothing to work with. That was one thing Gia immediately admired. Most men wanted their insults applauded. Dante let them sit quietly until the target noticed the bruise. Gia followed Linda and Claire into a small side gallery where auction guests had not yet been allowed. The walls were hung with dark paintings. The air smelled like old wood, white flowers, and the faint metal scent of climate control. Linda shut the door softly behind them and turned so fast that the public smile vanished. What is wrong with you? Linda asked. Gia almost laughed from the sheer familiarity of it. Not what happened. Not are you upset. Not did we hurt you. Just what is wrong with you, as if Gia herself were a broken item Linda had been forced to keep on display. Long list, Gia said. Tonight I'd start with the pearls. Linda's mouth tightened. The pearls are mine. They were Grandma Eleanor's. And now they are mine. And you didn't think to tell me? I am not required to seek your permission. No, but maybe you could have tried basic decency. Do not use that tone. Gia stepped closer. Then explain why Victor Sloan is standing beside my grandmother's pearls like a cat with a stolen bird. Claire closed her eyes. Linda snapped, Enough. Gia turned to Claire. You signed the paperwork? Claire opened her eyes. Gia, did you? Claire looked at Linda first. That told Gia more than the answer. Yes, Claire said softly. Gia nodded once. The hurt came, but it came from a place already crowded. Why? It was just paperwork. No, Claire, a coffee receipt is just paperwork. A consignment contract for Grandma's pearls is a choice. Linda's voice cut in. Your sister helped me because she understands responsibility. Gia looked at her mother. Responsibility to who? To this family. To its image, you mean? Linda's eyes flashed. Image matters. You may not understand that because you have built a life around not caring how things look. Gia felt the old wound open, but this time she did not step into it. My whole job is caring how things look. Your job is temporary rooms. And somehow I still know when something has been staged. Claire went very still. Gia noticed. Linda did too. What is that supposed to mean? Gia looked between them. It means I think this sale is about more than charity. It means Victor wanted those pearls in the center of the room. It means Claire looks like she's been holding her breath for months. It means every time I ask a real question, you both act like I put a match near gas. Do not be dramatic. Stop making drama profitable. Claire's voice broke through, thin and tired. Gia, please stop. Gia turned to her sister. Then tell me what's happening. Claire shook her head. I can't. Can't or won't? Can't. The word fell differently. Not stubborn, scared. Linda stepped in immediately. She does not owe you an explanation. Gia's laugh was quiet this time. Of course she doesn't. Nobody owes me anything in this family except silence and a dress code. Claire's eyes filled. That isn't fair. No, Claire, none of this is fair. I get called unstable because I pay my own bills late sometimes and take jobs where I come home with glue in my hair. Meanwhile, you vanish for weeks. Mom sells grandma's pearls. Victor Sloan parks himself in our family business like a parasite in a tuxedo, and somehow I'm still the embarrassing one because my dress might cling in photographs. Linda's face went pale with rage. I said that out of concern. No, you said it because my body embarrasses you. At least have the courage to own your cruelty. For a moment, the room went silent. Claire stared at Gia like she had said something both forbidden and necessary. Linda lifted her chin. You have always twisted everything. Gia's anger cooled suddenly. That was new. Usually, Linda could pull her into heat. Tonight the anger folded inward and became something quieter, something with edges. No, Gia said. You trained me to explain pain so politely that nobody else felt guilty hearing about it. I'm done doing that. Linda looked away first, just for a second. That tiny second gave Gia more satisfaction than yelling would have. Claire whispered, I'm sorry. Gia turned to her. For the pearls? For a lot of things. Linda snapped, Claire. But Claire did not look at her mother now. She looked at Gia, and the fear in her eyes finally had shape. I left Benton in May. The room seemed to drop beneath Gia's feet. What? Claire swallowed. I left in May. Gia stared at her. Mum said you were working on a federal compliance case in June. I know. And the corporate arbitration in July. I know. And Thanksgiving seating has to consider your law partners because they might come. Claire looked down. Gia looked at Linda. Her mother's face had become closed, carved, furious, not ashamed, furious. You knew, Gia said. Linda's jaw tightened. Claire needed time. Gia laughed once. It came out too soft. Claire needed time, so you gave her a whole fake career and used it to hit me with. That is not what happened. That is exactly what happened. Claire wiped under one eye quickly. Gia, I didn't ask her to. I know, Gia said, and meant it. That was the worst part. Claire had always needed rescuing less than Linda needed a golden daughter. Claire could fail, but Linda could not let the story fail. So she had taken Claire's silence and polished it into a weapon against Gia. What happened at the firm? Gia asked. Claire's face shut down. Linda's voice turned cold. This conversation is over. No, this conversation has been postponed since May. It's not over. Claire took a breath that shook. Victor happened. Gia already knew, but hearing the name still changed the room. Claire continued quietly. He was a client, connected to one of the firm's private funds. I wasn't lead counsel. I was reviewing documents, compliance language, basic contract cleanup. I noticed transfers that didn't line up. Some names were wrong. Some dates had been changed. When I asked questions, one of the partners told me to leave it alone. Then Victor invited me to lunch. Gia felt cold. Alone? Claire nodded. He was kind at first, said I had a good eye, said some people at the firm were careless, said if I helped him find where the paperwork had gone wrong, he could protect me from being blamed. Gia looked at Linda, and let me guess, he didn't. Claire hugged her, clutched tighter. He already had documents with my login attached, approvals I never made, changes I never touched. He said if I cooperated, the scandal would stay quiet. If I didn't, my name would be the one everybody remembered. Linda's voice softened for Claire in a way it never softened for Gia. She was terrified. Gia looked at Claire, not Linda. Why didn't you tell me? Claire's mouth trembled. Because I was ashamed. That's not a reason to disappear. It felt like one. Gia wanted to stay angry. It would have been cleaner. Anger kept the old family roles in place. Claire had hidden something huge. Linda had lied. Gia had been the fool again. But Claire looked so small standing in that gallery, and Gia could still remember her older sister at 17, sitting on Gia's bed and helping her sew fake pearls onto a black thrift store jacket, because Linda had said no one would take Gia seriously at the art showcase. Claire had rolled her eyes then and said, "Let them underestimate you. It saves time." Gia looked away because memory was inconvenient when a person was trying to stay armored. "How much does Victor have on you?" Gia asked. Claire's silence was answer enough. Linda stepped forward. "Gia, you are not involved in this." Gia looked back at her. "The pearls are involved. You made sure of that. I sold them to cover part of Claire's rent and legal consulting fees. Since May." Linda froze. Claire looked at her mother. Gia's eyes narrowed. "You've been paying Claire's rent since May." Linda said nothing. Gia let out a slow breath. The sentence had formed from instinct, and Linda's silence had confirmed it. Unbelievable. Claire whispered, "Mum." Linda's face hardened. "I helped my daughter." "No," Gia said. "You helped one daughter and used the lie of her success to humiliate the other. That is a cruel way to describe a mother's sacrifice." Gia stared at her. "Do you hear yourself when you speak, or do the pearls block the sound?" Linda recoiled as if slapped. Claire stepped between them slightly. "Gia, stop, please." Gia looked at Claire, and the hurt shifted again. "You want me to stop because the truth makes you uncomfortable. I spent my whole life stopping before anyone else had to feel uncomfortable." Claire's eyes filled. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I know. Mom meant enough for both of you." Linda opened the door. "We are returning to the auction before this becomes a scene." Gia laughed quietly. "You brought Victor Sloan into our dead grandmother's jewelry. The scene started before I walked in." Linda walked out first, rigid with anger. Claire remained behind for 1 second. She looked at Gia like she wanted to say something else, but fear pulled the words back. "Does Dante know?" Claire asked. Gia frowned. "Know what?" "About Victor. About me. He knew you left the firm." Claire's face tightened. "Of course he did. Why are you afraid of Dante?" "I'm not." That sounded almost convincing. Claire glanced toward the door. "Victor says Dante is worse." Gia looked at her sister. "Victor also says paperwork changed itself under your login." Claire swallowed. Gia stepped closer. "Claire, listen to me. I don't know Dante. Not really. I know he's dangerous. I know people are scared of him. I know he has the kind of power that makes rooms act weird. But Victor wanted you to be afraid of the one person in that room who scares him. That means something." Claire's eyes searched hers. "Be careful with men like that." "Dante?" "All of them." Gia softened. "I am careful." "No, G, you're brave. It's not the same thing." That hit harder than Gia expected. The door opened again, and Linda's voice floated in, polished and sharp. "Claire." Claire stepped back. I have to go. No, you don't. Claire gave her a sad little smile. You say things like that because you still think doors open just because they should. Then she left. Gia stood alone in the gallery for a few seconds, listening to the muffled sound of the auction hall beyond the door. Her mother had lied. Her sister had fallen. Victor Sloane had fingerprints everywhere. And Dante Moretti had known enough to be dangerous before Gia had known enough to be angry. When she returned to the hall, Dante was waiting near the corridor, one hand in his pocket, expression calm, too calm. You heard? She asked. No. Liar. He looked at her. I did not hear. I read your face. That is deeply annoying. Yes. Gia stood beside him, both of them looking out over the room. Claire left the firm in May. I know. Victor has documents tied to her login. I suspected. My mother sold the pearls to cover rent and legal help. That I did not know. Gia glanced at him. Finally, a surprise. Your mother is good at hiding shame. My mother is good at creating it. Dante's eyes moved toward Linda, who was now smiling beside a trustee as if she had not just been pulled apart in a side gallery. Victor will use the family tension. He already is. Then we use it better. Gia turned. We? You said you were tired of being tested. That was not a marriage proposal to organized crime. No, organized crime would bring better flowers. Gia stared at him. His face remained serious for half a second. Then the corner of his mouth moved. She huffed despite herself. You are much weirder than your reputation suggests. My reputation lacks detail. It also lacks jokes. I charge extra for those. Do you invoice by murder or by hour? Depends on the client. Gia shook her head, but some of the pressure inside her eased. That was dangerous too, she knew. Humor could become a doorway. Dante seemed to know that, and used it sparingly, like a man who did not waste bullets. He looked toward Victor. Sloane has been trying to damage my legitimate fronts for months. Shipping delays, donor rumors, compliance reviews that appear from nowhere. He likes paperwork because paperwork kills slowly and leaves clean hands. And Claire's paperwork helps him? It gives him leverage over a law firm, your family, and an auction tied to half the city's charity class. If he can make the scandal look like a respectable family problem, he becomes the man who helped clean it up. Gia watched Victor touch Linda's elbow lightly as he spoke to her. Linda smiled. Claire stood beside them, silent. He's making himself necessary. Yes. My mother loves necessary men. Dante glanced at her. Do you? No. I love good lighting, clear contracts, and not being interrupted by men with secrets. You are in the wrong room. I built this room. That does not make it safe. No room is safe just because it's pretty. Dante looked at her then, and this time the respect did not disappear quickly. You understand more than people think. Gia's throat tightened, which irritated her. People thinking less of me has been a major theme. Useful sometimes. That's what I was afraid of. He lowered his voice. Gia, I can look into Victor without touching your family. No, you can't. Victor tied himself to my family on purpose. Then tell me what I am allowed to do. The question stopped her. Not because she had no answer, because no man had asked it that way before. Not what do you want me to handle, not move aside, not trust me. Tell me what I am allowed to do. The power was still there. Gia could feel it. Dante could have made calls, pulled records, cornered men, bought information, and probably found 3 buried secrets before dessert. But he stood beside her in the room she built and waited. Gia looked away, before that could matter too much. You can tell me what you already know, she said. You can tell me before you act on anything connected to Claire or Linda. You can protect your own business however you want. You cannot decide that my family is yours to fix. Agreed. That fast? Yes. Suspicious. I understand clear terms. You understand control. His eyes held hers. Yes. That is why terms matter. Gia did not know what to do with that answer. She expected powerful men to deny wanting control. Dante did not deny it. He placed it on the table like a knife and turned the handle toward her. Before she could speak, the auctioneer announced the opening lot. Applause softened across the room. Guests began settling into seats. Victor moved toward the front with Linda and Claire. Rebecca caught Gia's eye from near the side wall and lifted her tablet slightly. The paperwork. Gia nodded. Dante leaned closer. Do not look at Victor when Rebecca sends it. Why? Because you will want to. Gia looked straight ahead. I hate that you're right. I am enjoying it quietly. You enjoy many things quietly? Most things. That is not less creepy. His almost smile returned. Gia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She did not look at Victor. She looked down as if checking a vendor update and opened Rebecca's message. The scanned consignment form loaded slowly. Gia's thumb throbbed beneath the handkerchief as she zoomed in. Linda Parker, owner. Claire Parker, legal representative. Victor Sloan, sponsoring guarantor. Gia paused. Sponsoring guarantor, she whispered. Dante's face did not change. Show me. She angled the phone enough for him to see without handing it over. His eyes moved fast. He guaranteed the reserve price. In English, if the pearls do not sell above a set amount, he covers the difference or buys them at that price. So he gets them either way. Yes. Gia looked up. The pearls glowed under glass beneath her arch. Her grandmother's pearls were not being donated. They were being trapped. Why would he want them? Gia asked. They're not worth enough for Victor Sloan to blink. Not as jewelry. As what? As proof of pressure. As a symbol. As a way to own the thing your mother used to cover Claire's problem. Gia understood slowly. So if Claire talks, he can say my family came to him for financial help. Yes. And if Mom pulls back, he keeps the pearls. Yes. And if I make noise, I look like the unstable younger daughter throwing a tantrum over jewelry. Dante looked at her. Yes. Gia almost laughed. She did not, because the laugh would have cracked. Victor had staged it beautifully. Not beautifully like Gia's work. Beautifully like a trap hidden under flowers. Every path embarrassed someone except him. He moved the case to the center, Gia said quietly, because he wanted me to see it. Yes. He wanted me angry. Yes. So I would make a scene. Yes. Gia looked at Victor. He did not look back this time. He did not need to. I almost did. But you did not. Not yet. Dante's eyes touched hers. Good. The auction began. Lots passed with soft applause and raised paddles. The room moved around Gia like a river she had designed, but no longer controlled. She stood in the shadows beside Dante, one hand around her phone, watching men and women pay impossible sums for polished objects, while her own family sat in the front row, like part of the collection. Claire never lifted her paddle. Linda smiled when spoken to. Victor waited. Rebecca came near them during the fifth lot. There's something else, she said quietly. Gia did not look away from the stage. Of course there is. The appraisal on the pearls is inflated. How inflated? Enough to look less like jewelry and more like a money movement. Dante's gaze sharpened. Who appraised them? Rebecca checked the tablet. A private appraiser recommended by Sloan. Gia closed her eyes for 1 second. Of course. Rebecca lowered her voice. Gia, I can flag the sale internally. Delay final transfer. Not stop it without legal risk, but slow it. How long? 48 hours. Maybe 72 if I ask questions nobody wants to answer. Ask them. Rebecca nodded. Gladly. Dante looked at her. Discreetly. Rebecca's eyebrows lifted. Mr. Moretti, I have worked museum acquisitions for 16 years. Discreet panic is my native language. Gia smiled, despite everything. I like her. So do I, Dante said. Rebecca gave them both a look that said she would analyze that later, then moved away. The pearls came up as lot 11. Gia felt it before the auctioneer said Eleanor's name. The air around Linda changed. Claire lowered her eyes. Victor leaned back slightly, comfortable as a king watching taxes arrive. The auctioneer spoke warmly about family legacy and feminine grace and civic generosity. Gia nearly gagged. Feminine grace always seemed to appear in speeches right before women's pain was sold to benefit someone else. A photo of Eleanor appeared on the screen behind the case. Gia's breath caught. Her grandmother stood in a garden in a pale blue suit, pearls at her throat, round face bright with laughter. Gia had not seen that photo in years. Pretty things do not have to apologize for taking up space, baby. The bidding opened. A woman in emerald lifted a paddle, then an older man, then someone on the phone. The number climbed past what the pearls were worth. Rebecca was right. This was not bidding. This was performance. Money moving in public while everyone pretended to admire family history. Gia stood very still. Dante's voice brushed the edge of her hearing. Breathe. I am. No. She inhaled through her nose. Her lungs hurt. Victor finally lifted his paddle. The auctioneer smiled. Mr. Sloane. Of course. Of course he wanted the room to see him claim them. Gia looked at Linda. Her mother's smile trembled, but she held it. Claire looked sick. Another bidder lifted. Victor lifted again. The price rose. Gia's fingers curled around the phone. Dante did not tell her to calm down. That might have been the first thing he did right all night. He simply stood beside her, silent, a wall with a pulse. The auctioneer called the price once, twice. Then another paddle lifted from the back of the room. Everyone turned. Gia turned too. One of Dante's men stood near the rear arch holding a paddle. Gia looked at Dante. What are you doing? Bidding. I can see that, Mr. Subtle. You said I could protect my business. These are my grandmother's pearls, and Victor is using them to launder influence through a public sale tied to people who also affect my shipping permits. Gia stared at him. That is the thinnest excuse I have ever heard. It is still an excuse. Dante. He looked at her, and the humor faded. If he gets them, he owns the story. If I get them, he does not. And then what? You own the story? No. Then you decide what happens to them. The room seemed to go quiet around her, though the bidding continued. Gia looked at him, searching for the hook, the catch, the hidden chain. I said I don't take gifts from men with bodyguards, she said. This would not be a gift. It would be evidence held in trust. That sounds like rich people nonsense. It is useful nonsense. Victor lifted his paddle again, eyes now fixed on Dante. Dante's man lifted again. The number became absurd. Gia whispered, "Stop." Dante looked at her. "If you win them," she said, "he'll say I used you. He will say that anyway. I mean it. So do I. You are not buying my grandmother." "No," Dante said quietly. "I am buying time." That stopped her. The auctioneer called another number. Victor hesitated for the first time. A tiny delay, a crack in the polished rhythm. Then he lifted his paddle again. Dante's man lifted immediately. The room murmured. Victor smiled, but the smile was hard now. He lifted once more. Dante's man lifted once more. The auctioneer's voice rose with delight. Linda looked caught between horror and greed. Claire looked at Gia, eyes wide. Gia understood then. Dante was not only trying to stop Victor, He was forcing him to spend publicly, forcing him to show hunger, forcing the room to notice that this was not a sweet charity purchase. It was a fight wearing pearls. Victor lowered his paddle. The auctioneer called once, twice, sold, to the bidder in the back. The applause came, confused but obedient. Rich people applauded uncertainty if it happened at a high enough price. Gia turned to Dante slowly. "You are impossible." "Frequently. I told you not to fix my life. I delayed a sale. With a fortune. A manageable fortune. That is not a human phrase." His mouth almost curved. "Noted." Gia looked toward Victor. He was clapping, softly, smiling, but his eyes were on her, not Dante. He wanted her to know the test had changed. Dante saw it too. "Now he knows you matter." Gia's throat tightened. "To you? To the situation?" That was careful. "Yes. Try honest." Dante looked at her for a long moment. "Yes. To me." The answer went through her quietly. Not like thunder. Worse. Like a locked window opening in a room she had convinced herself had no air. Gia looked away first. "That's a bad idea." "Yes. At least we agree." "No," Dante said. "I said it was bad. I did not say I was against it." She turned back despite herself. His face was calm, but his eyes were not. There was something in them that had not been there on the sidewalk. Interest had been easy. Amusement had been safe. This was different. This had weight. And Gia, who had spent years turning herself into the joke before anyone else could, suddenly had no joke ready. Then her phone buzzed again. This time the message was from Claire. "Don't trust him completely." Gia stared at the words. Her stomach tightened. Another message appeared. "But don't trust Victor at all." Gia looked across the room. Claire sat beside Linda, face forward, hands folded, expression empty. Only her thumb moved over her phone beneath the edge of her clutch. A third message came. "Thanksgiving. Mom's charity dinner. Victor will be there. He wants Dante there too. I don't know why." Gia showed Dante the screen. His expression cooled. "When?" "Thursday." "Your mother invited Victor?" "My mother would invite a shark if it donated to the right foundation. She invited me too." Gia stared at him. "You knew?" "The invitation arrived this morning. I had not planned to attend." "And now?" His eyes moved to Victor. "Now I am hungry." Gia gave him a look. "For turkey or revenge?" "I have never trusted turkey." Despite herself, Gia laughed. It came out small and tired, but real. Dante looked at her like the sound had changed something. Gia stopped laughing because his attention did not feel casual anymore. She cleared her throat. "This does not mean we are a team. No. It means we have overlapping problems. Yes. And boundaries. You will remind me. Often. I expect so. And if I tell you not to interfere with my mother, I will ask what you mean by interfere." Gia narrowed her eyes. "That is already interfering. It is clarifying. You are exhausting. You are bleeding again." Gia looked down. The handkerchief had loosened. Dante reached slowly, then stopped before touching her hand, waiting. The pause was so small, no one else would have noticed. Gia noticed everything. She should have stepped back. Instead, she held out her hand. Dante untied the stained handkerchief with careful fingers. His hands were warm, controlled, and far gentler than rumor had any right to allow. He looked at the cut, then took a clean folded square from his inner pocket, because apparently the man traveled with enough linen for a minor medical unit. "How many of those do you have?" Gia asked. "Enough. For blood? For problems?" "That is the same answer, isn't it?" "Sometimes." He wrapped her thumb again. "Not too tight. Not too loose." Gia watched his face while he worked. There were men in the room who feared him, men who hated him, women who wondered about him, and Victor Sloan plotting something under a smile. But Dante's attention stayed on a small cut on Gia's thumb, like the rest of the world had agreed to wait. It was unsettling. It was also, though she hated the word, tender. "There," he said. Gia looked at the clean bandage. "Thank you." He released her immediately. "You are welcome." She should have made a joke. She did not. The auction continued around them, but something had shifted. The pearls were no longer Victor's, at least not tonight. Claire had admitted part of the truth. Linda's lie had a date now. May. A month that sat in Gia's mind like a marker on a map. Dante had become more than a dangerous man with dry humor. He had become a question with resources, and Gia had become visible in a way she did not yet trust. By the time the final lot sold and the guests began moving toward the reception room, Gia's body felt heavy with exhaustion. The installation held. The lights did not fall. The curtains behaved. Tyler survived. The rich people praised the atmosphere, which meant they believed it had no maker. Gia took that as a professional victory and a personal insult, both familiar enough to carry. Near the freight entrance, Rebecca handed her a folder. "Copies," she said. "Paper. Because I suspect you're the kind of woman who trusts paper when people act slippery." Gia took it. "I am now in love with you." Rebecca smiled. "Get some sleep before you make decisions." Sounds fake. It is rare, but possible. Rebecca glanced toward Dante, who stood a few yards away speaking quietly into his phone. "Be careful with him. Everyone keeps saying that. Because he's dangerous." "I know." "No," Rebecca said gently. "You know he is dangerous to other people. Be careful, because men who are gentle only with you can make danger feel like intimacy." Gia had no immediate answer. Rebecca touched her arm. "That does not mean he is lying. It means your heart is not a security system." Then she left Gia alone, with the folder and a sentence that would probably haunt her at inconvenient times. Dante ended his call and approached. "My driver can take you home." "No. You have a broken case, an injured hand, and family documents tied to Victor Sloan. And a van. You are tired. I am always tired. It doesn't make me cargo." He absorbed that without arguing. "Then I will follow you." "No." "Gia." "No, Dante." "Listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this with my nice indoor voice once. I do not need a convoy, because my mother lied and some blonde demon tried to buy my grandmother's pearls. I need to go home, eat something irresponsible over my sink, read these papers, and decide how angry I want to be tomorrow." Dante studied her. "What would make you accept help?" The question made her pause. She shifted the folder under her arm. "A reason that doesn't sound like ownership." He nodded slowly. Then he reached into his coat and handed her a card. "Not glossy, not dramatic, plain black with one number on it. If you feel unsafe, call." Gia took the card. "That sounds like ownership adjacent." "No, it is an exit." She looked down at it. "An exit." That was better, annoyingly better. "I might not use it," she said. "I assumed. But I'll keep it." "Good." She looked up. "And Dante?" "Yes." "Do not investigate my apartment, my finances, my exes, my medical history, my credit score, my eating habits, my building code violations, or whether my van needs new brakes." His face remained solemn. "Does it?" "Dante." "Fine." Painful word again? "I am developing tolerance." Gia slipped the card into her pocket beside her phone. "Happy for your growth." Then she rolled her repaired case toward the freight elevator. She did not look back until the doors began to close. Dante stood in the service corridor under harsh fluorescent lights. no longer softened by auction glow, still too elegant for the world around him, and somehow more real there than he had seemed beneath chandeliers. He lifted his chin once. Gia let the elevator doors close. The ride down smelled like metal, dust, and old cardboard. Gia leaned against the wall, folder pressed to her chest, and allowed her face to fall apart only after she was alone. Not crying, not yet, just letting the muscles stop performing strength for a few floors. Her thumb throbbed, her back hurt. Her mother's words sat in her body like cold stones. Claire's confession replayed again and again. I left in May. Victor happened. I was ashamed. When the elevator opened to the loading dock, Tyler was waiting beside the van with a paper bag. I stole sandwiches from catering, he said. Not stole, rescued. They were going to throw them away because the bread corners had gone emotionally stale. Gia looked at him. Tyler held out the bag. You looked like you might forget food exists. Something in her chest softened painfully. Thank you. You okay? Gia laughed. Absolutely not. He nodded. Cool. Do you want me to pretend I didn't ask? Yes. Done. They loaded the van in silence. Tyler did not ask about Dante. He did not ask about Victor. He did not ask why Gia's eyes looked like a storm had moved in and signed a lease. That was why she liked him. He panicked about curtains, but knew when silence was kind. On the drive home, New York slid past in wet lights and late traffic. Gia ate half a sandwich at a red light and got mustard on the folder, which felt appropriate. Her apartment was in Queens, above a closed travel agency and across from a laundromat that buzzed all night. It was not large, it was not impressive, but every object inside had been chosen by her. Orange lamp, blue sofa, crooked shelf, framed sketches, a bowl of old beads from her grandmother's sewing box, a fat ceramic bird with a cracked wing. No one had approved any of it, which made it beautiful. Gia locked the door, kicked off her boots, and placed Rebecca's folder on the kitchen table. For a while, she did nothing. She stood there in the quiet, still wearing Dante's second handkerchief around her thumb, with the city humming beyond the window, and understood that after tonight, silence would not protect anyone. Not Claire, not herself, maybe not even Linda, though Gia was less enthusiastic about that part. She opened the folder. The paperwork was worse when read under kitchen light. The appraisal was too high. The guarantor terms were too generous. Claire's signature looked real but shaky, nothing like the firm lines Gia remembered from birthday cards and legal forms. Linda's signature was clean. Victor's name appeared not like a sponsor, but like a shadow behind every page. There were references to consulting fees, private settlement support, temporary housing advances, and one phrase that made Gia sit down slowly: family reputation management. Gia read it twice. Then a third time. She thought of every call from Linda about Claire's busy schedule, every comparison, every little joke about Gia's unstable freelance income, every reminder that Claire understood real responsibility. All that time, Linda had been paying Claire's rent, managing Claire's failure, hiding Claire's fear, and using the fake story as proof that Gia was the daughter who had not become enough. Gia put the paper down. Her phone buzzed. For one wild second, she thought it would be Dante. It was Claire. I'm sorry. Gia stared at the words until they blurred slightly. Then another message came. I should have told you. Gia typed 3 different answers and deleted them all. Anger wanted a speech. Love wanted a bandage. Exhaustion wanted to throw the phone into the sink. Finally, she wrote back, yes, you should have. The message delivered. Claire replied, after a long minute, I know. Gia sat in the kitchen with the folder open, the sandwich forgotten, and something inside her that had been tight for years began to ache in a different direction. Not healed, Not even close, but maybe not completely numb anymore. A new message appeared. Thanksgiving is not just dinner. Mom is announcing a new family pledge through the Thornbridge Foundation. Victor arranged donors. He wants Dante in the room. I think he wants to force some kind of public alignment. Gia's fingers tightened. Another message. Mom doesn't know how bad it is, or she won't admit it. I can't tell anymore. Gia typed. What does Victor have on you that isn't paperwork? This time, Claire did not answer for almost 10 minutes. Gia stared at the screen. Her apartment seemed too quiet. The orange lamp buzzed softly. A siren passed far away. Her refrigerator clicked on. Then Claire's answer came. A recording. Gia stopped breathing. Of what? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Me agreeing to alter a memo. I didn't understand what he was asking at first. By the time I did, he made it sound like I had already admitted intent. He says if I don't cooperate, he sends it to the bar, the firm, and the press. Gia closed her eyes. Victor did not only trap people with lies. He fed truth into the trap first. A small truth, a frightened truth, enough that no one could dismiss the rest easily. Her phone buzzed again. Please don't tell Mom I told you. Gia let out a bitter laugh. Oh, Claire. She typed back. I won't, but I'm not pretending at Thanksgiving. Claire's reply came fast. What does that mean? Gia looked at the folder, at the family reputation management line, at her grandmother's angry ceramic bird on the shelf, at Dante's black card sitting on the table beside the papers like a quiet dare. It means I'm done being useful to lies. She sent it before she could soften it. Then she picked up Dante's card. She did not call him that night. Pride stopped her. Fear helped. Rebecca's warning sat beside both of them. Men who are gentle only with you can make danger feel like intimacy. Gia placed the card under the ceramic bird and told herself that was symbolic, which was just another word for dramatic when you were tired enough. But when she finally slept, she dreamed of pearls in a glass case, copper branches bending overhead, and Dante Moretti standing on the other side of a door he did not open because he was waiting to be invited. The next morning, Gia woke to 3 missed calls from Linda and 1 text from Dante. Did you eat something irresponsible over the sink? Gia stared at it for longer than she should have. Then she typed back, turkey sandwich, mustard incident, very private. His reply came 2 minutes later. The sandwich has my condolences. Gia smiled into her coffee before she could stop herself. Then Linda called again, and the smile vanished. Gia let it ring. For the next 3 days, the city kept moving, while the whole shape of Gia's life rearranged itself in quiet, dangerous increments. She worked 2 installations, answered vendor emails, bought a new case latch, and pretended she was not carrying a family scandal in her tote bag. Claire sent short messages at odd hours, never enough, always frightened. Linda left voicemails that began with hurt dignity and ended with instructions about Thanksgiving. Rebecca confirmed the pearl transfer had been delayed pending appraisal review, and Gia loved her a little more each time the phrase pending review appeared in writing. Dante did not flood her phone. He did not push. He sent only 3 messages. Victor is pressing the appraiser. Then, Claire's former firm is denying internal knowledge. Then, do not answer unknown calls today. Gia answered that one. You don't get to order me around by text. His reply came fast. That was advice wearing a bad coat. She laughed in the hardware aisle and scared a man holding picture hooks. On Wednesday afternoon, Dante appeared at her warehouse. Not her apartment. That mattered. Her warehouse was where her company kept frames, fabric, old props, ladders, paint, and impossible dreams in plastic bins. It was also public enough that she did not feel cornered, and private enough that conversation could happen without Linda walking in, wearing cream satin and emotional knives. Gia found him standing beneath a half-built moon gate from a previous garden wedding, looking at a stack of fake marble columns. "Those are foam," she said. "I know. You touched one. I tapped it. With suspicion? With admiration. It lied well." Gia set down a roll of copper wire. "What are you doing here?" "You said not to come to your apartment. I did not say come to my warehouse. You also said you wanted information before I acted." Gia wiped dust from her hands. "You have information." "Yes." "About Victor?" Dante looked. Her chest tightened. "Say it." Dante looked around. Tyler was cutting fabric across the room with headphones on. Two freelancers were packing candle cylinders near the back. The warehouse door was open to the street. Safe enough. Not safe. Nothing about this felt safe anymore. "Victor is using the recording to force Claire to support a public statement at Thanksgiving," Dante said. "Something about the family pledge, the firm scandal, and mutual confidence in Sloane's foundation partnerships." Gia stared at him. "In normal human speech, he wants your mother to praise him publicly. He wants Claire beside her. He wants me in the room so it looks like I accept the narrative." "And me?" Dante's gaze held hers. "He expects you to react badly." Gia folded her arms. "Well, I do have brand consistency. He will provoke you. My mother can handle that part. He will use her." Gia looked down. That was the part she hated most. Linda was cruel. Linda was vain. Linda had hurt Gia in ways that would take years to name properly. But Victor using Linda did not feel like justice. It felt like watching a thief use a house key stolen from someone careless. "What happens if Claire refuses?" Gia asked. "The recording goes public, possibly with edited paperwork." "And if Mom refuses?" "He keeps the pearls, leaks the rent support, and makes it look like your family tried to hide legal misconduct through charity channels." "And if you refuse to attend?" "He says I fear exposure, or that my legitimate fronts are tied to the same money." Gia let out a slow breath. "He built a room." "Yes." She looked at the half-built moon gate, the hanging frames, the old chandelier wrapped in plastic. "Then we changed the room." Dante's eyes sharpened. "How?" Gia almost smiled. "You're asking me?" "Yes." "Careful. I might enjoy that." "I expected you would." She walked to the work table and pulled a notebook from beneath a pile of ribbon samples. Thanksgiving dinner is at the Parker house, but Mom calls it a charity dinner because she likes mashed potatoes better when donors are nervous. She'll have about 40 guests. Relatives, trustees, family friends, probably 2 journalists pretending they aren't. She'll do cocktails in the front salon, dinner in the long room, speeches before dessert because she thinks people listen better before sugar. Dante moved to the other side of the table. "Where will Victor stand?" "Wherever the room makes him look central. You know that already." "I know event predators. They choose light and exits." Dante's mouth moved faintly. "Event predators. Don't mock me. I have survived bridesmaids with glue guns. I would not dare." Gia sketched the Parker dining room from memory. Long table, fireplace, sideboard, French doors to the garden, Linda's favorite portrait of Eleanor above the mantel. Gia marked the toast position. "Mom will praise Claire. She always does. It will be worse because she's hiding Claire's collapse. The more false a story is, the louder Linda tells it." "And you?" Gia tapped the edge of the page. "She'll make a joke." Dante's face changed. "About you." "Yes. What kind?" Gia shrugged too lightly. "Depends on the wine. Usually something about my work, my weight, my unmarried state, my finances, or my talent for making a spectacle." Dante went quiet. Gia looked up. "Do not do the murder face in my warehouse." I am not. You absolutely are. What would you like me to do when your mother insults you in front of guests? Nothing. No. Yes. Gia. She leaned over the table. Listen to me. Linda has been humiliating me in front of people since I was old enough to understand tone. If you react, she wins. Victor wins. Everyone gets to say the Mafia man got angry because Gia Parker cannot handle a family joke. No. His jaw tightened. So I sit there. You sit there. And watch. You watch. And if Victor escalates, then we handle Victor. Dante's eyes held hers. You are asking me to let you be hurt. No, I am asking you not to mistake my pain for your permission. The words struck the air between them so cleanly that even Tyler, across the room with headphones on, seemed to sense something and looked up. Dante did not move. His face lost every trace of humor. Gia's heart beat too hard, but she did not look away. Finally, he said, "You are right." She exhaled, though she had not realized she was holding her breath. He looked down at the sketch. I will sit. Good. I will hate it. That is allowed. I will not touch your fight unless you ask. Gia nodded. Good. But if he touches you, threatens you, or tries to remove you from the room, I act. She considered arguing. Then she thought of Victor's eyes, Claire's fear, the recording. Yes. Dante nodded once. Agreement. Not romance. Not trust fully, but terms. Paper without paper. Gia picked up a marker and circled the toast spot. The real moment is after Linda's first speech. She'll praise Claire as the successful daughter. She will make me into comic relief, because that's how she balances the family picture. I need her to do it. Dante looked at her. Why? Because if I bring up Claire's rent out of nowhere, I look cruel. If Linda calls me unstable, or a beggar, or whatever little knife she chooses, then the question becomes fair. His gaze sharpened with something almost like pride. You let her create the opening. I've had a lot of practice being bait. Might as well use it. Dante was quiet for a moment. And Claire. I won't destroy her. You may need to expose her. I can expose the lie without making her the villain. That is difficult. Good thing I'm difficult. His almost smile returned, but there was something softer behind it now. Yes. Gia looked down before that softness could settle. Rebecca can confirm public parts of the scandal? She can confirm the appraisal delay, the guarantor terms, and that Victor influenced the auction placement. That may be enough to shake him, not end him. No, Gia said. But Thanksgiving doesn't have to end him. It has to take Claire out of his hand. Dante looked at her with that same serious attention from the auction, the kind that made Gia feel seen and measured, not for weakness, but for force. You are strategic. I design events. Strategy is just drama with measurements. I will remember that. You say that a lot. I mean it. The warehouse quieted around them. Outside, a truck passed. Somewhere in the back, Tyler dropped something and cursed softly. Gia looked at Dante's hand resting near her sketch, broad and still, the same hand that had wrapped her thumb, bid on her grandmother's pearls, and stopped moving when she said no. Why are you helping me? She asked. I told you. No. You told me why Victor matters. You told me why Claire matters. You told me why the pearls matter. You did not tell me why I matter. Dante looked at her for a long time. Then he said, because you stood in front of me with blood on your hand and worried more about silk gauze than fear. Because you looked at Victor Sloan for 5 minutes and understood him better than men who have done business with him for years. Because your mother hurt you in public and you still saw your sister's fear before your own revenge. Because when I offer power, you ask where the chain is. Because you are funny when you are furious and careful when you pretend to be reckless. Because everyone in that room saw your body, your job, your anger, your jokes, and thought they knew how much space you were allowed to take. His voice lowered. They were wrong. Gia could not speak. That was inconvenient, because Gia had always believed silence was something other people forced on her. She did not expect it to rise from inside her, warm and frightening, because a dangerous man had said the exact thing her grandmother used to say, without knowing it. Pretty things do not have to apologize for taking up space. She looked away, but not quickly enough. Dante saw. Of course he saw. Gia, he said. No, I did not ask anything. You were about to. I was going to say your name. That's worse. His mouth curved faintly. Noted. She laughed once, shaky and unwilling. Then she stepped back, because the air had gotten too close. We have a dinner to ruin. Strategically adjust, he said. Gia pointed at him. Do not steal my job. He lifted both hands slightly. Never. By Thursday evening, Gia understood that dread had texture. It lived under the skin, rough and alive. It made every small task feel too sharp. Zipping her dress, fastening earrings, choosing shoes, brushing powder across her face, standing in front of the mirror long enough to look at herself instead of inspect herself. She wore black because Linda expected it, but not the quiet black dress her mother would have approved of. This dress, wrapped around her body in soft matte fabric, fitted at the waist, low enough at the neckline to show her grandmother Eleanor's angry bird brooch pinned near her heart. The brooch was gold, slightly crooked, with one tiny pearl eye and a beak that looked ready for court testimony. Gia wore it deliberately. Her hair was pinned up, loose curls escaping around her face. Her lipstick was deep plum. Her boots were polished. Her body looked like her body. Round stomach, full hips, soft arms, strong shoulders, visible, not apologized for. Gia stared at herself until Linda's voice quieted enough for Eleanor's to rise. Pretty things do not have to apologize for taking up space, baby. Gia touched the brooch. Let's make people uncomfortable, Grandma. Her phone buzzed. Dante. Outside, Gia looked out the window. A black car waited at the curb. She opened the message and typed back, I did not agree to arrive with you. His reply came, I know. I am parked near your building like a respectful threat. Gia smiled, despite the fear in her stomach. That phrase is terrible. He answered, yet accurate. She stared at the phone for one more second, then put it in her bag. She did not ride with him. She drove herself in the van, because there were some entrances a woman had to make in her own vehicle, even if the vehicle made a noise like loose change in a dryer. Dante followed at a distance. She pretended not to notice. He probably pretended she did not know. It was almost peaceful, if peace could be built from stubbornness and surveillance. The Parker house glowed when Gia arrived. White columns, warm windows, wreaths already hung, because Linda believed Thanksgiving should hint aggressively at Christmas. Cars lined the street. Through the front windows, Gia saw guests moving with drinks in hand. Her childhood home looked beautiful from outside. It always had. That was the trick. Some houses learned early how to keep their damage behind curtains. Gia parked the van between a silver Mercedes and a black town car just because it made her happy. Dante stepped out of his car behind her. He looked at the van. It has personality. It has a loose belt and unpaid emotional needs. Like most of my cousins. Gia looked at him. He wore a black suit, no tie, dark coat, and the calm expression of a man arriving at dinner with 3 knives hidden in his reputation. You look cheerful. I am attending Thanksgiving with enemies. Is that unusual? No. Usually the food is worse. Gia adjusted the strap of her bag. Her fingers were cold. Dante noticed. He did not touch her. Are you ready? No. Good. How is that good? People who think they are ready miss things. She looked at the house. Through the window, she saw Linda near the fireplace, laughing, Claire beside her, pale but standing, Victor near the mantel, holding a glass, positioned exactly where Gia had predicted, the central light, the clean sightline. The exit nearby. Gia breathed in. Dante's voice softened. "Remember the room." Gia looked at him. "You built it in your head," he said. "Now walk through it." For 1 second, the fear became manageable. Not gone, just placed. Gia nodded. Then she walked up the steps to her mother's Thanksgiving charity dinner with a Mafia boss behind her, her grandmother's brooch over her heart, and a truth sharp enough to cut the whole room open if she used it wrong. Linda opened the door before Gia could knock. Her mother's smile froze for 1 tiny second when she saw the brooch. Then her eyes moved to Dante, and the smile bloomed again, polished and hungry for approval. "Gia," Linda said. "Mr. Moretti, how lovely." Gia smiled. "Hi, Mom." Linda leaned forward to kiss the air near Gia's cheek. "You're late." Gia looked at the clock in the hall. "I'm 4 minutes early." "Yes, well, with your parking." Dante's voice came smoothly. Her parking was excellent. Linda blinked, unsure what to do with that. Gia did not look at him because if she did, she might laugh, and laughing too soon would ruin the timing. They stepped inside. The Parker house smelled of roasted turkey, cedar candles, expensive wine, and old tension warmed for company. Relatives turned. Donors smiled. Family friends looked at Dante first, then at Gia, then back again with the bright-eyed curiosity of people who had just discovered gossip had arrived wearing Italian shoes. Gia felt their attention move over her body, her dress, her brooch, Dante beside her. She let it. Tonight, she would not shrink to make the staring shorter. Claire stood near the sideboard with a glass of water. Her eyes met Gia's. Gia gave the smallest nod. Claire looked like she might cry. Victor appeared beside Linda. Gia, Dante. How perfect. Dante smiled without warmth. Victor. Gia looked at Victor's glass. Red wine. Bold choice for a man who kept spilling poison. Mr. Sloane. "I hope you are calmer tonight. I hope you are less obvious." Linda's fingers tightened around her wineglass. Gia. Victor laughed. "I enjoy her spirit." "No, you don't," Dante said. The room went slightly quieter. Victor's smile hardened. "Still protective, I see." Dante's voice stayed even. "Still observant." Gia stepped between the words before they became weapons too early. "Where do you want me, Mom?" Linda recovered. "Dinner will begin soon." "You are beside Aunt Marjorie." "Because she's deaf or because she likes me?" "Because seating charts exist for a reason. Usually punishment." Dante's mouth twitched. Linda's smile sharpened. "Mr. Moretti is beside me." Gia looked at Dante. "Congratulations." His eyes flicked toward Linda's chair at the head of the table. "I will survive. We're all rooting for you." Linda gave a brittle laugh and moved to greet another guest. For the next half hour, Gia drifted through the front salon with a glass of sparkling water and the strange feeling of being both daughter and detective. She noticed everything. Victor spoke to donors in pairs, never long enough to be cornered. Claire avoided him, but could not stop checking where he was. Linda watched Claire like a curator watches a cracked vase during an earthquake. Dante spoke politely when spoken to and gave away almost nothing, except once, when Uncle Paul asked if he was in waste management. Dante said, "Among other things," and Gia nearly choked on her drink. People asked about her work, but in the thin way that meant they expected a charming answer, not a real one. Gia gave them real ones anyway. Load limits, fire code, labor costs, insurance, fabric treatment. One woman's eyes glazed over in under 12 seconds. Gia considered it a small victory. Then Aunt Marjorie touched Gia's wrist and whispered loudly, "He's very handsome." Gia looked toward Dante, who was listening to Linda explain the Thornbridge Foundation with the patience of a wolf studying a fence. "He's very something. Does he like fat girls?" Gia almost spit out her water. Aunt Marjorie patted her wrist. "Don't look scandalized. I'm old, not dead. Your grandmother would have asked worse." Gia laughed, a real laugh. The sound carried just enough that Dante looked over. Gia looked away first. Dinner was called at 7. The long dining room glittered with candles and Linda's best china. Gia had forgotten how much work Linda could put into a table. White flowers, gold chargers, folded linen, handwritten place cards, crystal glasses, the entire surface arranged with the strict beauty of a woman who believed control could pass for grace if the silver was polished enough. At the far end, above the fireplace, Eleanor's portrait watched the room with that half-smile Gia remembered from childhood. Gia touched the brooch again under the table after she sat. Aunt Marjorie settled beside her and immediately began complaining about the soup, though she had not tasted it. Dante sat near Linda, exactly where he could see Victor, Claire and Gia, without turning his head much. Gia noticed. Victor noticed her noticing. The game had already begun. The first part of dinner was almost normal, which made it worse. People complimented the food. Linda directed conversation. Claire answered questions about legal work, with short, careful sentences that said nothing. Victor waited. Dante used silence like a luxury item. Gia ate enough to keep her hands busy and listened. Then Linda tapped her glass. The room softened into attention. Gia felt Dante's eyes move to her. There it was. The first toast. Linda stood at the head of the table, glowing in candlelight, pearls at her ears, one hand resting on Claire's chair. "Every year," Linda began, "I look around this table and feel grateful. Grateful for family, for friends, for the privilege of giving back, and for the remarkable people who remind us what responsibility looks like." Gia looked at Claire. Claire looked down. Linda continued, "This year, I am especially proud of my Claire. Many of you know her as the lawyer in our family. Brilliant, tireless, devoted to justice, and always so careful with the Parker name." Gia's stomach tightened. Across the table, Victor's mouth curved. Dante did not move. Linda's voice warmed. "Claire has faced a demanding year with elegance, and I could not admire her more." Applause rose around the table. Claire's face had gone white. Linda looked toward Gia. Gia felt it before it came. The small shift, the gathering of the room's attention. Linda's need to balance praise with a joke, to make Claire's pedestal taller by placing Gia at the base of it. "And of course," Linda said lightly, "we are grateful for Gia as well, who reminds us that creativity comes in many forms. Some people build legal careers. Some people build centerpieces." A few guests laughed softly. Gia did not move. Linda smiled, encouraged by the easy little cruelty. And apparently, some people build such dramatic centerpieces that even dangerous men start following them home. More laughter this time, nervous, curious. Dante's eyes went cold. Gia kept her hand on her napkin. Not yet. Linda lifted her glass. "But we love our Gia, even if she has always preferred spectacle to stability." Aunt Marjorie muttered, "Oh, Linda." Victor leaned back, pleased. Gia felt the whole room watching her, waiting to see if she would make a face, snap back, become the story they expected. The dramatic daughter, the fat daughter, the loud one, the unstable one. The one who could be counted on to turn pain into noise before anyone had to ask where the pain came from. Gia picked up her glass. She smiled. "To stability," she said. The room laughed again, easier now, thinking the moment had passed. It had not passed. It had opened. Dinner continued, but Gia felt the shape of the next move forming quietly. Linda sat down, satisfied. Claire looked like she might faint. Victor's eyes stayed on Gia longer than they should have. Dante's hand rested beside his plate, perfectly still. Gia did not look at him. She did not need to. She knew he was doing exactly what she had asked. Sitting, watching, hating it. The main course was served. Conversation rose again. People relaxed. That was useful. Gia waited through Turkey, through Linda's story about Claire winning a debate competition at 16, through Uncle Paul asking Dante if Italy was still nice, through Victor making a polished comment about family loyalty that made Claire's fork tremble. Gia waited because rooms had timing. You did not drop a chandelier during soup. You waited until every eye naturally lifted. After dinner, before dessert, Linda stood again. Gia almost smiled. There she was, reliable as gravity. Linda lifted her glass. Before dessert, I want to thank Victor Sloan, whose generosity and guidance have meant more to this family and our foundation work than I can properly express. Victor lowered his head with perfect modesty. Gia looked at Claire. Claire's eyes found hers. Gia saw the plea there. Not stop, not exactly. More like, please do not destroy me. Gia gave her the smallest nod. I won't. Linda continued. There are people who step forward when families need support. People who understand reputation, legacy, and the responsibility of preserving what matters. Gia placed her napkin on the table. Dante saw it. Victor saw it. Linda did not. Not yet. Gia stood slowly. The room quieted in pieces, confusion moving from one guest to another. Linda's smile stiffened. Gia? Gia picked up her glass, but did not raise it. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm enough to surprise even herself. I have a question, Mom. Linda's eyes flashed. Can it wait? Gia smiled softly. No. The room went still. Victor's expression did not change, but his fingers tightened once around his wineglass. Gia looked at her mother across the candlelit table, beneath Eleanor's portrait, with Claire pale and trembling between them, and Dante Moretti sitting like a silent storm to Linda's left. If I'm the unstable one, Gia asked, why have you been paying Claire's rent since May? The silence that followed did not fall. It opened. The silence that followed did not fall. It opened. It opened across the long dining room like a crack in glass, slow and bright and impossible to ignore. Forks stopped halfway to plates. Wineglasses hovered near mouths. Someone near the far end made a soft sound, then swallowed it. The candles kept burning. The silver kept shining. Eleanor Parker's portrait watched from above the fireplace, with the same almost smile Gia had known all her life, as if her grandmother had been waiting years for one of them to finally say the thing out loud. Linda stood frozen at the head of the table, with one hand around her glass and the other pressed flat against the white tablecloth. Her face did not change at first. That was her talent. When Linda Parker was embarrassed, she did not blush. She became smoother. She became brighter. She became a locked door with lipstick. Claire went white, not pale, white, as if every candle in the room had taken its light from her face. Her hand moved toward her water glass and missed it by an inch. The glass tipped, caught the edge of her plate, and spilled water across the tablecloth. Nobody moved to help because everybody was too busy pretending not to understand what they had just heard. Gia stayed standing. Her heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her throat, but her voice had not shaken, and that gave her a strange little strength. She had imagined this moment for 3 days and all her life at the same time. In her imagination, Linda yelled. Claire cried. Victor smiled. Dante moved. Guests whispered. But the real room was worse, because it was so quiet. Quiet meant the question had landed. Linda recovered first. Of course she did. She gave a short, soft laugh, the kind she used when someone had dropped a plate at a wedding, and she wanted everyone to admire how generous she was about broken things. "Gia," she said, "this is not the time." Gia looked at her mother. "You keep saying that like there was ever going to be a better one." A faint murmur moved near the sideboard. Aunt Marjorie sat very straight beside Gia, her old eyes bright. Victor did not move, but Gia saw the tiny shift in his expression. He was pleased. Not because the question hurt him, because it hurt the Parkers, and pain made people sloppy if they did not know how to hold it. Dante sat perfectly still beside Linda, one hand near his untouched wineglass, his eyes on Gia. He was doing exactly what she had asked, sitting, watching, hating it. She could feel the effort in him like heat from a closed oven. Linda's mouth tightened. "Your sister has had a difficult year. I helped her privately because that is what mothers do." "What mothers do," Gia said slowly, "is not the problem." Linda's eyes flashed. "Then what is?" "You helped Claire. Good. You should have. She needed help. She deserved help. I'm not standing here because my sister needed rent money." Gia turned just enough to look at Claire, letting the room see that she was not aiming the knife there. There is no shame in needing help. There is no shame in losing a job, or being frightened, or making a mistake, or being trapped by someone who knows how to make a mistake look like a crime. Claire's lips parted. Her eyes filled, but she did not speak. Gia turned back to Linda. "The shame is that you hid her pain and used her fake success to humiliate me. Since May, you have been paying Claire's rent while telling everyone she was busy being brilliant. Since May, you have called me unstable, irresponsible, embarrassing, difficult, and dramatic. Since May, you have used a lie about one daughter to beat the other one with." "Enough," Linda snapped, and this time the polished public voice cracked. The room heard it. Linda heard the room hear it. Her face stiffened. Gia's hands were cold. She placed them lightly on the back of her chair, so nobody would see. "No, not enough. That is actually the problem. I have had enough for years, and you kept serving more because everyone laughed politely." A guest at the far end looked down at his plate. A cousin shifted in his chair. Someone whispered Claire's name. Linda looked around, noticing that sympathy had not gone where she expected. It had scattered. That frightened her more than anger would have. Anger was familiar to Linda. Uncontrolled silence was not. Victor stood slowly. The movement was elegant, timed beautifully. Gia nearly admired it. He placed his napkin beside his plate and gave the room a sad smile. "I think emotions are running high. This family has been under strain, and I would hate to see private pain turned into public accusation." Gia looked at him. "You would hate that?" "I would," Victor said gently, "especially when certain people may be encouraging Gia to speak from anger rather than understanding." Dante's eyes darkened. Gia lifted one hand without looking at him. "Not yet." Victor noticed again. His smile deepened by a fraction. "You see, this is exactly the concern. A powerful man enters a family matter, and suddenly an already volatile daughter believes she has a weapon." The word volatile moved through the room like smoke. Gia knew that word. Women like her were always volatile when they stopped absorbing insults quietly. Fat women were volatile when they did not make themselves funny first. Daughters were volatile when they refused to be grateful for crumbs. Workers were volatile when they said no to people with clean hands and dirty money. Gia smiled. "Victor, I would love to be very clear. Dante Moretti did not put me up to this. He did not write my question. He did not plant my anger. He did not explain my own mother to me. I have known Linda Parker since I had teeth. I didn't need a Mafia boss to interpret the menu." Aunt Marjorie coughed into her napkin, and it sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Victor's smile thinned. Then perhaps he gave you information. No, my mother gave me information by freezing when I said May. Claire gave me information by looking like she was about to pass out every time your name came up. You gave me information by moving my grandmother's pearls to the center of an auction hall and expecting me to make a fool of myself. Linda turned sharply. Pearls? Gia, what did you do? What did I do? Gia stared at her. Mum, you put Grandma Eleanor's pearls into an auction without telling me, with Victor Sloan attached as a guarantor, and you're asking what I did. Several guests turned toward Linda now. Linda's face went tight. They were mine to sell. Legally, maybe, but they were not yours to turn into bait. Victor laughed softly. Bait. What an unkind word for charity. Gia looked at him. Then let's use your kind words. Sponsoring guarantor. Inflated appraisal. Family reputation management. Temporary housing advances. Private settlement support. Are those better? Victor's expression did not break, but the eyes changed. There it was, the first real shadow. Rebecca Cole stood near the dining room entrance. Gia had not seen her come in. She wore a dark green coat over a plain black dress, and she held a slim folder against her side, like it had always belonged there. Linda looked at her in confusion. Rebecca? Rebecca's voice was calm. Gia asked me to confirm the public auction details, if they became relevant. Victor turned toward her. This is a private dinner. And the auction was a public charity transaction with several reviewable filings, Rebecca said. The pearls were delayed from transfer because the appraisal raised internal compliance questions. Mr. Sloan's guarantor role is documented. His requested placement of the piece is also documented. So is the fact that the appraiser was recommended by his office. The room changed again. Quiet became attention. Attention became danger. Victor's smile did not move. Careful, Rebecca. Professional reputations are fragile things. Rebecca looked at him. Only when built from fragile materials. Gia almost loved her all over again. Linda's hand trembled around her glass. I do not understand what is happening. Gia looked at her mother and felt the strangest thing. Not pity exactly, not forgiveness, but the first clean view of Linda Parker as something other than an all-powerful mother. Linda was a woman standing in a room she had tried to arrange, realizing someone else had moved the furniture while she was admiring the flowers. She was still cruel, still proud, still guilty, but she was also used. That did not erase anything. It just made the shape of the night more complicated. Claire stood suddenly. Her chair scraped against the floor. Every eye moved to her. Victor's head turned slowly. Claire. It was only her name, but the threat underneath it made Gia's skin go cold. Claire looked at him, and for a second she looked like she might sit down again. Gia knew that look. The body's old habit of obedience. Fear asking permission to survive. Then Claire looked at Gia, and something passed between them that did not need words. Gia did not soften her face. She did not rescue Claire with a smile. She simply stayed standing, a witness, a sister, a woman who had already opened the room and would not close it again. Claire's voice shook, but it came. Victor has been blackmailing me. Linda made a sound like the breath had been knocked out of her. Claire. Claire did not look at her mother. I left the firm in May, after discovering financial irregularities connected to his accounts. He had documents tied to my login. He has a recording of me discussing a memo before I understood what he was doing. He told me if I did not cooperate, he would send everything to the bar, the firm, and the press. Victor sighed, almost tenderly. Claire, this is embarrassing. You are distressed. No, Claire said, stronger this time. I'm scared. There's a difference. The sentence hit the room cleanly. Gia saw a cousin glance away. She saw a trustee's face close with calculation. She saw one of Linda's friends press a hand to her mouth. Victor saw all of it too. "You should sit down," Victor said. Dante stood. He did not move toward Victor. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood, and the room remembered what he was. The silverware, the candles, the polished table, the family portraits, the entire safe little charity dinner seemed to hold its breath. Dante's voice was quiet. "She is speaking." Victor's eyes flicked to him. "This is not your family." "No," Dante said, "but threatening women at dinner is a public hobby of yours tonight, and I have become interested." Gia looked at him despite herself. That was almost too much. Almost, but not enough to take the moment from Claire. Claire clutched the edge of the table. "I have copies," she said. "Not everything, but enough. I gave some to Gia." Gia blinked. She had not. Then she understood. Claire was lying, but not to them. For them, she was making Gia look less alone. She was also making Victor wonder how much had escaped his hand. Victor's jaw tightened. Claire continued, "And Rebecca has the auction materials, and Dante's people have been looking into your influence over the firm." Dante looked at Claire for half a second. His expression said nothing, but Gia knew he heard the claim. He did not correct it. Victor smiled again, but it was thinner now. "You are all making serious allegations without understanding the legal consequences." Gia said, "There he is." Victor turned to her. "The real you," she said. The gentle donor disappeared fast. "I am warning you." "No, you are doing what you always do. You put a polite word over an ugly action and hope everyone respects the vocabulary. Consequences, reputation, support, guidance, family, charity. You use soft words because you know the truth sounds bad." Linda whispered, "Gia." Gia looked at her. "Not now, Mom." For the first time in Gia's life, Linda obeyed. Victor's gaze moved across the room. He was calculating who had turned, who remained useful, who could still be frightened. Then his eyes landed on Claire. "You signed those documents. You took the assistance. You allowed your mother to sell those pearls. You sat beside me all evening and smiled. Do not pretend you were a hostage because your sister found a dramatic moment." Claire flinched. Gia's anger sparked hot, but she held it. "That's what men like you never understand. Someone can make mistakes and still be trapped by you. Claire is not perfect." "Great. Nobody at this table is. But you used her shame as a leash, and now you're mad because the leash is visible." Victor stepped around his chair. Dante moved 1 inch. It was barely anything, but Victor stopped. Gia saw it, and so did everyone else. Victor laughed quietly. "Ah, there it is. The feared Dante Moretti, hiding behind a decorator's speech." The word decorator was meant to reduce her. Gia felt it, then let it pass through. Not because it did not hurt, because tonight she had better uses for pain. Dante's voice stayed calm. "She does not need to hide behind me." "No?" Victor asked. "Then why are you here?" Gia answered before Dante could. "Because I invited danger to dinner, so the other danger would stop pretending it was dessert." Aunt Marjorie said loudly, "Best Thanksgiving in years." A nervous laugh broke somewhere down the table, and the tension shifted just enough to remove Victor's rhythm. He disliked laughter that was not controlled by him. Gia saw it. Dante saw it. Rebecca saw it. Claire saw it too, and some tiny bit of color returned to her face. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced down. The look was quick, but not quick enough. A crack appeared in his expression. Dante's own phone lit a second later. He did not check it. He kept his eyes on Victor. Rebecca did check hers. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Interesting. Victor's face hardened. Rebecca. She looked at Linda. The auction board just opened a formal review of the Sloan appraisal. They are freezing the transfer of the pearls and requesting supporting documents from the appraiser. Linda sat down slowly. Rebecca continued, "And because several donors at the auction also attended tonight, I imagine the questions will spread faster than Mr. Sloane prefers." Victor's smile died. Not dramatically. Not all at once. It simply left his face, like a mask removed by an invisible hand. Dante finally looked at his phone. "Your appraiser is unavailable," he said. Victor stared at him. He seems to have decided cooperation is healthier than loyalty. The dining room went cold. Gia knew then that Dante had acted somewhere beyond the edges of what she could see. She should have been angry. Part of her was. Another part understood that he had kept the action away from her family until Victor made the threat public. Terms, not perfect, but held enough. Victor looked at Dante with real hatred now. "You think this ends anything?" "No," Dante said, "but it begins something." "Careful, Moretti." Dante's eyes were dark. "You keep saying that to people who should have started saying it to you." For 1 second, nobody breathed. Then Victor straightened his jacket. His public self returned, but badly. He looked around the table, smiled at people who now avoided his eyes, and gave a small bow of the head. "It seems the evening has become emotional. Linda, thank you for dinner. Claire, I suggest you call your attorney before repeating any of this." Claire's voice was quiet. "I will." Victor looked at Gia last. "And you?" Gia tilted her head. "Me?" "You do not understand what you stepped into." Gia smiled. "Maybe. But I understand rooms. Yours is collapsing." His eyes sharpened, but before he could answer, Dante moved around the table and stood beside Gia. Not in front of her. Beside her. Victor noticed the difference, and that seemed to annoy him more than if Dante had blocked her completely. Victor left without another word. Nobody spoke until the front door closed. Then the dining room exhaled all at once. Chairs shifted. Whispers started. Linda looked smaller in her own house than Gia had ever seen her. Claire sat down, as if her knees had stopped holding instructions. Rebecca stepped back into the hall, already on her phone. Dante remained beside Gia, silent. Gia felt the aftermath rush toward her. The trembling she had postponed. The fear. The grief. The rage. The terrible relief. Linda stood suddenly. Everyone should go. It was not elegant. It was not warm. But it worked. Guests rose quickly, eager to escape, and eager to repeat what they had seen. Coats were gathered. Kisses were given without affection. People promised to call, and meant they would gossip. Aunt Marjorie hugged Gia tightly and whispered, "Eleanor would have adored that brooch tonight." Then she left, before Linda could hear. Within 20 minutes, the house emptied, until only Linda, Claire, Gia, Dante, and the wreckage of Thanksgiving remained. Half-cleared plates, melting candles, wine rings, crumpled napkins, a family reputation lying open on the table like a bird that had hit a window. Linda turned on Gia, the second the last guest left. "Are you satisfied?" Gia was so tired she almost laughed. "No. You humiliated this family." Gia looked around the dining room. "Funny. I thought Victor did that. You could have handled it privately." "When? Before or after you toasted his generosity?" Linda's face twisted. "You always have to punish me." Gia stared at her mother. Something in her broke then, but not loudly. It broke like thread. "No, Mom. I wanted you to notice me without hurting me first." Linda went still. Claire covered her mouth. Gia's voice stayed quiet. "That's all. For years, that's all I wanted. I wanted you to come to one event and say, 'Gia built something beautiful.' I wanted you to hear me talk about work and not translate it into hobby. I wanted you to look at my body without correcting it in your head. I wanted you to call me because you missed me, not because you needed to inspect me before other people saw me." Linda's eyes shone, but she lifted her chin because tears were apparently another thing she believed needed posture. I tried to protect you from people's judgment. No, you joined them early so you could pretend you were preparing me. The words landed hard. Linda looked away. Gia softened, but only slightly. Claire needed you, and I'm glad you helped her. I mean that. But you did not need to make me smaller to keep her looking tall. Claire began to cry silently. Linda looked at Claire, then at Gia. I did not know how bad it had become. With Victor? Gia asked. Or with us? Linda had no answer. That was an answer. Claire stood and walked toward Gia. She stopped a few feet away, as if unsure whether she had the right to come closer. You should have protected me, she said, voice breaking. The sentence hurt, because it had truth inside it and unfairness around it. Gia nodded slowly. Maybe. Claire looked wounded. But I spent my whole life protecting everyone except myself, Gia said. I protected Mom from admitting she was cruel. I protected you from knowing how much it hurt to be compared to you. I protected family dinners from becoming honest. I protected every room by becoming the joke first. I can't do it anymore. Claire wiped her face. I'm sorry. I know. I should have told you. Yes, I was embarrassed. I know that too. Claire let out a small, broken laugh. You're not making this easy. No, I love you, Claire. I'm not auditioning for sainthood. That made Claire cry harder, and somehow both sisters laughed once through it. Then Claire stepped forward and hugged Gia. It was awkward at first, because grief always had elbows. Then it settled. Gia held her sister, and for one moment they were not golden daughter and embarrassing daughter. They were two tired women in the dining room of a house that had trained them to compete for warmth, finally understanding they had both been cold. Linda watched them. She looked lost. Gia released Claire and faced her mother. I'm going home. Linda's mouth opened. Gia, not tonight. I can't repair you tonight. I can't teach you how to love me correctly before dessert. I need peace more than I need an apology you don't know how to give yet. Linda's face crumpled just slightly. I do love you. Gia felt the words. She did. But love, from Linda, had always arrived carrying tools. I know, Gia said. But I need you to learn how to stop making it hurt. Linda looked down. For once, she did not argue. Dante had stayed near the doorway through all of it, silent enough that Gia almost forgot him, except she did not forget him at all. He had become part of the edge of the room, not controlling it, not saving her from it, just there. When Gia picked up her coat, he stepped aside to let her pass. Outside, the cold air hit her like mercy. Gia walked down the front steps and stopped beside her van. She realized she was shaking, not dramatically, just enough that her keys clicked against each other in her hand. Dante stood several feet away. May I come closer? The question almost undid her. She looked at him. His face was unreadable to anyone else, but not to her. Concern sat carefully behind restraint. Yes, she said. He came closer, still leaving space. For a while, neither spoke. Gia looked at the Parker house. Warm windows. Perfect wreaths. A home that had never known what to do with her unless someone needed a joke, a favor, or a warning. You acted, she said. Yes. The appraiser. Yes. I told you not to interfere with my family. I did not touch your family. I touched Victor's weapon. Gia looked at him. That is a very Dante answer. It is also true. She wanted to be angry. She searched for it and found only a tired, complicated gratitude that did not cancel the concern. Next time, you tell me before your people make someone unavailable. He is not harmed. That is not the comforting sentence you think it is. His mouth curved faintly, then faded. I will tell you. Before. before. And you will not buy things from my childhood without asking me again. The pearls are safe. That was not the boundary. He lowered his head once. You are right. Gia studied him under the streetlight. Dangerous to the world, soft around her, but not harmless, never harmless. Rebecca's warning still lived in her. Gia needed it there. A woman could want warmth and still keep a map of the exits. What happens now with Victor? She asked. He loses some public cover. Claire gets counsel not connected to his firm. Rebecca's review slows the auction record. My people follow the money he tried to move through the appraisal. He will not disappear tomorrow. I wasn't asking for a fairy tale. No, you do not seem to trust them. I like them fine when they admit dragons are expensive. Dante's smile came softly. There will be pressure, calls, threats made through polite people, but tonight damaged him. And Claire, if she cooperates early, she has a chance. Not an easy one, but a real one. Gia nodded. Good. And you? Gia looked at him. Me. What do you need? It should have been an easy question. Food, sleep, a lawyer, a new case latch, therapy, a mother with emotional literacy. Instead, Gia felt tears rise so suddenly she turned away. She refused to cry, facing the Parker house. She had done enough for that building. I need my grandmother's pearls out of whatever rich people nonsense they're currently in, she said. They are held pending review. That is not out. I can arrange. Gia looked at him. He stopped. Then he corrected himself. We can discuss legal options with Rebecca. Gia nodded. Better. I am learning. Slowly. Thoroughly. She laughed, and the laugh turned into a shaky breath. Dante did not reach for her. That almost made the tears worse. Would it be terrible? Gia asked. If I said I don't want to drive yet? No. I'm not asking you to take over. I know. I just need a minute. Dante looked toward his car. There is a thermos of coffee inside. Gia stared at him. You brought coffee to a Thanksgiving ambush? I dislike being unprepared. Of course you do. It may be terrible coffee. I respect emotional honesty. He opened the back door of his car and took out a black thermos. He handed it to her without ceremony. Gia drank from the lid cup while standing beside her van, wearing a black dress and an angry bird brooch, after publicly cracking open her family. The coffee was strong, dark, and slightly bitter. It is terrible, she said. You drank half. I contain multitudes. Dante leaned against his car, coat open, tie absent, eyes on the quiet street. Yes, you do. The words were not flirtation, not exactly. They were recognition. Gia kept drinking so she would not have to answer. 2 weeks later, the story had not ended. Real stories rarely respected dramatic timing. Victor Sloan did not vanish in a puff of exposed villainy. He made calls. His attorneys sent careful letters. A gossip column hinted at tensions inside the Parker family, but did not name Claire directly, because Rebecca had apparently terrified someone with the phrase, documented liability. The auction board suspended the sale of Eleanor's pearls. Claire hired an attorney Dante recommended, but Gia approved after a phone call that involved many questions and one extremely unimpressed silence. Linda did not apologize immediately. She sent flowers, which Gia considered aggressive. Then she sent a text that said, I do not know how to do this correctly, but I am trying not to make it worse. Gia stared at that message for a long time before replying, that is probably the first correct thing you've said. Dante did not flood her life. That mattered. He checked in, but not constantly. He sent information when it touched her. He asked before acting when the action crossed her line. Sometimes he failed in small ways. Once he sent a security car without telling her, after an unknown man stood too long outside her warehouse. Gia called him and said, no. Dante said, he was watching your door. Gia said, then call me before placing a silent man in a black car outside my job, like I ordered the intimidation package. There was a pause. Then Dante said, understood. The car left. The next morning, Dante texted, I dislike that. Gia answered, growth is painful, Dr. No. He replied, you are enjoying this too much. She smiled for 10 minutes and denied it to Tyler. Claire began telling the truth in pieces. It was messy. She apologized, then got defensive, then apologized again. Gia did not make it easy, because easy had been part of the old lie. But she answered the phone. Sometimes they talked about lawyers and Victor. Sometimes they talked about nothing. One night, Claire called from the sidewalk outside her new attorney's office and said, I miss being your sister without being Mom's example. Gia sat on the floor of her warehouse, beside a box of broken lanterns and said, then stop applying for the position. Claire laughed, then cried, and Gia stayed on the line. Linda changed slowly, which meant sometimes not at all, and sometimes suddenly. At Christmas, she did not mention Gia's dress. She started to. Gia saw it coming, and Linda physically pressed her lips together, like she was holding back a burglar. Gia almost admired the effort. Almost. Later that night, Linda stood in Gia's apartment for the first time in 3 years, looking at the orange lamp, the blue sofa, the crooked shelf, the sketches, the ceramic bird, and the beautiful chaos of a life she had never understood. This is very you, Linda said. Gia looked at her. Linda swallowed. I mean that as a compliment. Gia nodded once. I'm deciding to believe you. Linda touched one of Gia's framed event sketches. You really do build worlds. Gia did not cry until after Linda left. By February, Victor's public kindness had started to rot at the edges. Rebecca's review led to questions. Questions led to records. Records led to people who had been afraid, deciding that perhaps they were less afraid together. Dante's pressure remained mostly invisible, which was how he preferred it. Gia did not ask for every detail, not because she trusted blindly, because she learned the difference between needing information and needing control. Dante, to his credit and occasional irritation, learned the same. The pearls came back in March, not from Dante, not as a gift, through a legal settlement tied to the failed consignment, delivered in a velvet box that had been inspected by 3 lawyers, Rebecca and Gia herself, because romance was one thing and paperwork was still holy. Linda signed them over to Claire and Gia jointly. Claire said Gia should keep them. Gia said Claire should stop trying to solve guilt with jewelry. They argued for 20 minutes, then decided the pearls would live with Gia because Gia had better storage, and because Claire admitted she was afraid of losing them in a move. It was not perfect. It was honest. Gia preferred honest. The first time Dante saw Gia wear them, it was not at a gala. It was not at a charity dinner. It was not under chandeliers or in a room full of enemies. It was at her warehouse on a rainy Thursday, when she had put them on over a paint-stained black sweatshirt because Tyler said the delivery guys were bringing the wrong arches and she needed ancestral authority. Dante arrived with coffee and stopped just inside the loading door. Gia looked down at herself. Don't start. I have said nothing. You're doing the face. What face? The quietly devastating face. His mouth curved. Is it working? Against my better judgment. He came closer, eyes on the pearls. They suit you. They suit everybody. That was Grandma's whole philosophy. No, Dante said. They look like they came home. Gia's throat tightened. That was unfairly good. I practiced in the car. She laughed. Rain tapped against the high warehouse windows. Somewhere in the back, Tyler shouted that the arches were indeed wrong and possibly cursed. Gia looked at Dante, then at the case of coffee in his hand. You brought enough for everyone? Yes. Learning. Thoroughly, he said. Their first kiss happened 2 weeks later, which surprised Gia because she had assumed a man like Dante would kiss like he did everything else, with terrifying timing and silent confidence. Instead, he asked. It was late. They were outside her warehouse after a donor installation had finally ended, and Gia was sitting on the back of her van, feet dangling, pearls in her pocket because she had worn them for courage during a client meeting and then removed them before lifting heavy frames. Dante stood in front of her, closer than usual, but still not touching. "You look tired," he said. "Romantic. You look beautiful too, but I have learned you distrust that when it comes first." Gia blinked. "That is unfortunately perceptive." "I pay attention." I noticed. Rain had stopped an hour earlier. The street smelled like wet pavement and exhaust. The city was not quiet, but around them, the noise seemed to soften. Dante looked at her mouth, then back at her eyes. "May I kiss you?" Gia's heart did something deeply embarrassing. She could have joked. She almost did. But some moments were too important to turn into cover. "Yes," she said. He stepped closer, slowly. Close enough for her to change her mind. Close enough for her to meet him halfway. Gia reached first, curling her fingers into the front of his coat, and Dante smiled against her mouth just before he kissed her. It was not gentle in the fragile sense. It was careful in the powerful sense. Like he knew exactly how much force he had, and chose tenderness anyway. Gia felt the choice. That was what made her close her eyes. When they parted, she whispered, "That is a bad idea." Dante rested his forehead lightly against hers. "We have covered this." "And you're still not against it?" "No. Idiot." "Yes." She laughed into his coat, and his arms came around her only after she leaned in. By spring, people were talking. Of course they were. Gia Parker and Dante Moretti, the event designer and the feared man, the woman with the sharp mouth and the body her mother had once tried to make smaller with comments, the man who made powerful men nervous and yet waited outside freight elevators with coffee because Gia refused to skip dinner during installations. Some people said he had rescued her. Gia corrected that rumor whenever it reached her. "No," she told one particularly brave vendor. "I rescued my own evening. He was there for ambiance." Dante heard about it and texted, "Ambiance?" Gia replied, "Expensive ambiance." He answered, "Accurate." The final break with Victor did not come with shouting. It came through filings, witnesses, financial records, and one former assistant who decided a life outside Victor's shadow was worth more than his severance. Claire's recording did surface, but not the way Victor intended. Her attorney released it with context, along with evidence of pressure and document manipulation. The story was ugly, but it was survivable. Claire's career changed shape, not ended, changed. She began working with a small legal clinic while the formal review continued. Linda called it temporary, until Claire said, "No, Mom, it's mine." Gia nearly dropped her coffee. Victor lost board seats first, then donors, then friends who had never been friends, only weather vanes. Dante did not celebrate publicly. Gia found out he had celebrated privately when Leo accidentally delivered a bottle of terrifyingly expensive champagne to her warehouse with a note that said, "For rooms that collapse correctly." Gia called Dante and said, "Is this a crime toast?" He said, "No crimes are listed on the card." She said, "That is not an answer." He said, "It is the only answer my lawyer likes." In June, Gia installed a gala at the same auction house where she had first met him. This time, her equipment case had a new latch. Her team was bigger. Her contract was better. Tyler had been promoted to installation manager, though he still panicked professionally about curtains. Rebecca had helped secure the job, then claimed it was because Gia was less annoying than most geniuses, which Gia accepted as affection. Gia arrived early, wearing work boots, black jeans, a loose white shirt, and Eleanor's pearls around her neck. Not hidden, not saved. Worn. Dante arrived at 6:42, because apparently fate liked repetition when it had a sense of humor. He stood outside the auction house in another dark coat, looking down at her perfectly intact case. "No disaster?" he asked. "Give it time." He looked at his polished shoes. "I wore the brave ones." Gia laughed. "Your shoes have trauma? They remember you. They nearly met art. They survived. So did we." The words came out softer than she expected. Dante heard the change. "He always did. Yes," he said. "We did." Inside, the auction house glowed with Gia's newest design. Not copper branches this time. Deep blue fabric, floating lanterns, silver thread, and a ceiling installation that made the whole hall look like the inside of a night sky. Guests would walk in and lift their faces. They would wonder. They would whisper. They would think magic had happened. Gia would know better. Magic was labor. Magic was planning. Magic was a woman who had spent years being underestimated and learned how to make the world look up anyway. Linda came that night too. She arrived with Claire, both of them nervous in different ways. Linda stopped beneath the lanterns and looked around slowly. Gia watched her, waiting, without meaning to. Her mother turned to her. "Gia," she said, voice not polished this time. "Just human. This is beautiful." Gia held very still. Linda swallowed. "You built something beautiful. It did not fix everything. It did not erase years. It did not make Linda a different mother in one sentence." But the sentence entered Gia softly and found the place where a younger version of her had been waiting too long. Gia nodded. "Thank you." Claire smiled at her through bright eyes. Grandma would be unbearable about this. Gia touched the pearls. "She is. I can feel it." Later, when the event was running smoothly and Tyler had stopped threatening a lantern vendor with emotional damages, Gia stepped into the side corridor for air. Dante followed after a minute, as if he had counted exactly how long solitude and loneliness should be kept apart. She looked at him, you hovering, respectfully, still creepy, still useful. He stood beside her, both of them looking through the open doorway into the glowing hall. Gia could see Linda speaking to Rebecca, Claire laughing with Aunt Marjorie, Tyler directing staff with theatrical despair. She saw the room she had built, the life she had stopped apologizing for, the man beside her who had learned that standing with her did not mean standing in front of her. Dante reached into his coat and pulled out a folded handkerchief, white, monogrammed, ridiculous. Gia stared at it. "Absolutely not. You are not bleeding." "Then why are you showing me that?" "For tradition." "That is the worst tradition. It was how we met." "No, we met because you were standing in the way being expensive. And you were dangerous with curtain rods." "I still am. I know." He held out the handkerchief anyway. This time, Gia took it. Not because she needed it, not because she owed him, not because he had asked in a way that made refusal difficult. She took it because she wanted to. Then she folded it once and tucked it into his coat pocket herself. "There," she said, "now you can stop offering me fabric like a Victorian ghost." Dante looked down at her hand near his chest. "May I say something sentimental?" Gia narrowed her eyes. "You get one sentence." He looked at her, serious and warm in the dim corridor. "You are the only room I have ever entered that made me want to become better before touching anything." Gia stared at him. "That was too good," she said quietly. "I'm angry." His smile came slow. "At me?" "At the sentence." "Should I apologize?" "No. Kiss me before I recover." He did. In the hall beyond them, the lanterns glowed like captured stars. Gia's pearls rested warm against her throat. Somewhere, her mother was trying. Her sister was healing. Victor Sloane was becoming a cautionary story, told in rooms where he used to be welcomed. Dante Moretti was still dangerous to the world, and Gia did not pretend otherwise. But with her, he had learned the shape of permission. With her, he had learned that protection without choice was just another locked door. And Gia, who had once been treated like the family punchline, stood in the center of the life she had built, and understood at last that she had never needed to become smaller to be loved correctly. She was still fat, still sharp, still creative, still tired sometimes, still wearing Eleanor's pearls on ordinary days because ordinary days were worthy. Still the woman who noticed when a room had been moved 6 feet to the left. Still the woman who could build wonder from wire, silk, and stubbornness. Still the woman who had told a feared Mafia boss to stop standing there being expensive and somehow made him laugh. And when Dante took her hand that night, he did not pull her into the glowing room. He waited. Gia smiled, squeezed his fingers, and walked in beside him.